Well, good evening. I'm Mayor Erica A. Stewart, and I'm here to say that all of the council members are here in person for our regular meeting. Will you please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
City Attorney, can you report out in closed session?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The council did meet on one matter of existing litigation in the matter of Randall Arsenault versus the City of San Luis Obispo, and no reportable action was taken on that matter.
Thank you. Today, we'll get to start our meeting with a presentation regarding the city-wide single vote transition and our communications and outreach plan. With that, I'll hand it over to Deputy City Manager Greg Herman.
Thank you, Mayor and council members. We are really happy to be here tonight. This presentation will focus on just that, how we're going to educate and inform the community about the upcoming change to our election system for this November. This is a follow-up to the corresponding ordinance adoption from your previous meeting. I'm joined tonight by Natalie Harnett and Whit Santisi, who are key members of the team that are going to be moving this project forward, but I do want to reinforce to the council and community that the entire city is going to be behind this effort, as we really see it as one of the most important things that we're going to embark on over the coming year. So tonight is really about acquainting the council and community with what this plan looks like. We'll go over a variety of strategies, metrics, and how we're going to make sure that we communicate with everyone. But the short story is that we're going to use every single tool that we have in terms of communications, and we're going to be trying some new tools as well that we haven't been able to use in the past. And we won't miss a chance, regardless of what we may be speaking about, to remind people about how they can make sure that their vote counts in this upcoming election. As a quick reminder, if folks weren't at the previous council meeting, we're here to talk about the implementation of a settlement agreement related to the California Voting Rights Act. This agreement does result in a new system for electing council members, and that's called Citywide Single Vote for Council. It is a relatively straightforward system. Instead of voting for 2 council members, everyone will vote for 1, with the top 2 council members being elected. And I also want to stress that the process for electing the mayor remains exactly the same. As the council is aware, this isn't necessarily a change that we asked for, but like cities across the state and even locally, we were forced to make a change or instead face costly litigation or move to other options. Ultimately, the council approved this plan as the best fit for our community, and we think it is because it preserves the ability for people to continue to vote in every election for council members and to select their candidate of choice from across the entire city instead of being constrained to a geographic region. It's also legally recognized, it's low cost for us to be able to implement, and it is compatible, importantly, with our county system, which we consolidate with for our election services in the city. We know that this can be a big change for everyone, and like I mentioned, we take it quite seriously, and we really focused on this over the coming year, and I'm super excited to be able to hand it over to Whit and Natalie to tell you a little bit more of what that will look like.
Thanks, Greg. Whit Santisi. Before I go into the outreach strategy for our communications plan, I want to first talk about how we developed the plan. In 2024, the City Council directed staff to put together a comprehensive communications and outreach strategy for this change. We hired one of the city's on-call communications consultants, Trippepi Smith, a nationally recognized marketing, technology, and public affairs consulting firm, in the summer of 2025 to develop this comprehensive plan. We chose them because we knew we would benefit from their expertise in voter outreach and voter education. They have worked with many communities across the state of California on voter education campaigns that enhance transparency and grow community-wide trust. Together, we reviewed past input, public comment, and public hearings. All of this information indicated a strong desire for clear, consistent communication and voter education leading up to the general election in 2026 in November. We held focused conversations with city staff, council members, county elections officials, and the human relations commissions, all of which provided incredibly important input and feedback that was incorporated into the plan. We also reached out to the community via a survey that gave us a really good benchmark to understand community awareness of this change, but it also provided us with key areas that were previously unclear and helped us to understand what community members want and need when it comes to explanations, visuals, and educational materials. So let's dive a little bit deeper into the community survey for a moment. The city surveyed 464 voters and community members to help inform communications. And we conducted this survey in late 2025. An analysis and report of the findings is included in the communications plan, but I did want to highlight some key points. First, awareness of the change and why it's happening is low. A significant share of the respondents across all demographic groups had not heard about the upcoming election change and expressed confusion about why the city's adopting citywide single vote, how it affects their ballot, how many candidates they can vote for, whether the change impacts representation. This shows a clear need for early, planned, and plain language education. Second, the new voting process is not yet clear to many voters. Regardless of background, many respondents indicated that they are uncertain how the new process works. They want the city to provide simple explanations, examples, and visual aids. They are concerned about making mistakes on their ballot, and they want to make sure that their vote counts. And third, preferred information sources vary widely. We already kind of knew this. The survey confirms that the city must use a multi-channel approach to reach all voter groups. Top channels overall include social media, direct mail and printed mailers, printed materials, local news websites and newspapers, the city's website, community meetings or workshop, and word of mouth. But for harder to reach groups, they have a higher reliance on word of mouth communications to raise awareness. They have a strong desire for Spanish first communications, not just translated once clicked communications, and preferred meetings at schools, parks, and community centers. So that was a really helpful key metric that came from the survey. Now let's look at the outreach plan itself. Every good communications plan needs clear goals. The primary goals of the communications plan are to clearly inform residents about the change, encourage voter registration, provide clear direction on how to vote to prevent invalid ballots. I did want to note about that, number 3, the good news is that most voters have already been making this shift in the past few city council elections. In fact, about 70% of voters in the last city council election voted for only one candidate. So this change may not be a huge shift for most voters. However, we are aware that for the remaining 30%, this change might be harder to understand, and we want to make sure that everybody knows how to make their vote count. And then finally, our last goal is to support voter turnout that meets or surpasses previous election levels. These were identified as communications goals based on input from City Council, community members, partner organizations, the County Elections Office, city staff, and volunteers. We also took into consideration our agreement related to, obviously, the California Voting Rights Act to make sure everything was aligned. Now let's dive a little bit deeper to get a sense of what success actually looks like. These key performance indicators were formulated based on data from the community survey as well as reported election results from previous elections. First, we want to maintain or increase the number of registered voters here in SLO. Of the roughly 41,000 eligible voters in San Luis Obispo, about 70% are registered to vote. We want to maintain this or increase this number for the 2026 general election. Second, we want to maintain or reduce overvotes of ballots cast. Ideally, we don't want to see any overvotes. That would be an ideal situation in this year's election, but we understand that that's realistic. There are overvotes in every election. On average, about 0.18% of ballots contain overvotes for city council election, and this is looking at data from 2020 to 2024. Some years have more, some years have less. To make it reasonable, we're hoping to maintain this average or reduce it to 0.15%. We also, and finally, are seeking to meet or exceed voter turnout this year. We looked at voter turnout in midterm elections in 2022, 2018, and 2014. The average midterm election turnout is about 64%. We're hoping to meet or exceed this for this year's election in November. And again, these are really helpful metrics for us to look at after, obviously, we do the communications, and Natalie's going to go into a little bit later how we're going to measure success during communications and be able to pivot and be nimble throughout. But it's helpful for us to have a set of targets so that we can understand overall outcomes, not just output. We will also be tracking communications measures, things like email open rates, website traffic, video views, social media engagement, but we want to make sure that we aim for more than that and tie our success to the election itself and not just communications metrics. So now we have an idea of what our goals are, what we're going to be measuring. Let's talk about who we're reaching. To put it simply, our job is to reach everybody. But in order to do that, we recognize that we need to put in a little bit of extra effort to include those who have been historically marginalized and members of harder to reach groups in San Luis Obispo. I've listed a few here to give you an idea of what I mean by historically marginalized or harder to reach groups. Essentially what that means is that we need to go to greater lengths to not only make sure these groups are aware of the change, but help everyone understand how to make their vote count in the upcoming city council election. What that looks like is meeting them where they are. For example, we'll go to the senior center and local senior living facilities to speak directly with seniors and help them understand this change. We'll go directly to neighborhoods and host pop-up tents with informational materials to inform community members in that specific neighborhood. We'll have a booth at farmers markets and other events to make sure we're reaching people who may not be aware of this change. We'll visit Cal Poly and Cuesta College campuses and host informational tables there and present the information to faculty, staff, and students. And we'll reach out to faith-based organizations to host tables outside of their congregations. These are just some examples of things we're going to be doing beyond what is typically done for this type of outreach for the city. The key takeaway here is that we need to meet people where they are. We cannot expect that they will come to us for necessary information. We also see this as an opportunity to build new connections. And in just a few slides, Natalie's going to share a little bit more about the tactics in the plan that will outline exactly what we do. So now that we know who we're going to reach, let's talk a little bit about our messaging. What are we going to say? The communications plan identifies 3 primary key messages to voters. It really outlines what residents need to know about council member elections. It's important for voters to understand the impact of their vote and why this agreed upon alternative to district voting is what we're moving forward with. We are also going to make sure that voters know that this does not change the way they vote for mayor, only council members. The following key messages and talking points will be used throughout this education campaign. First, you get to vote in every election and put all your support behind your preferred council member candidate. In previous city council elections, voters could cast votes for 2 candidates. Often voters only selected one. In district elections, voters would only get to participate in elections for city council members every other election. That means every 4 years for our city council. They would only be allowed to vote for one candidate who lives in their district, in their essentially neighborhood, even if they prefer a candidate in another district. With citywide single vote for council, all voters will continue to participate in every election and may select any candidate they believe best represents their priorities, regardless of where in the city the voter or their preferred candidate lives. Number 2, you get to vote for one council member candidate and the top 2 win, creating a level playing field for everyone. Many voters already vote this way, so it may not be a difficult shift for a lot of people. With only one vote, no singular group can boost multiple preferred candidates at once. Candidates are also less able to rely on second choice votes. This can create more space for new voices, and candidates are tasked with gaining meaningful support. This can also create an opportunity for candidates who might not have had that same opportunity in a system where one larger group can vote for multiple choices. And finally, you can unite with others across neighborhoods who have shared priorities to more effectively support a single council member candidate. With only one vote, communities with shared priorities, including smaller and minority communities or coalition of smaller groups, can build broader coalitions so that they can unite support behind a candidate across different groups. This can help connect communities or neighborhoods across regions. They don't have to worry about boundaries that may not have previously collaborated. It'll foster relationships that extend beyond an election cycle and will hopefully create more engagement within the city. This also allows for more collaboration, coalition building to make a real difference in who wins the election. Now, we know what you're going to say. Let's talk about our strategic approach to outreach and voter education. The city is going to be taking a phased approach to outreach and engagement, in which each phase builds upon the previous, the progress of the previous phase. A phased approach was also a direct recommendation from the County Clerk Recorder's Office and aligns with initial expectations for communications and engagement. The outreach will begin with broader education about the change to help residents understand what is happening and why, then transition into practical voter information. Getting closer to the election, we will guide the community from awareness to action. What this looks like. From January to June, we're going to focus on building awareness and understanding of citywide single vote for council. Our focus will really be on registered voters, partners, and harder to reach groups during this time. We will explain the new voting method and why it's changing and how it affects voters. We will emphasize the vote for one, top two win messaging, and emphasize that this method of election is about fairness, simplicity, and legal compliance. Tactics include website updates. We're currently working on revamping our single wide city vote landing page. It'll include our first mailer and explainer video and clips that we can then circulate around social media, presentations, and our community meeting schedule. I want to emphasize that in this phase to differentiate from other city outreach and garner widespread community participation, we will be developing a distinct brand for citywide single vote, the education campaign. A unified visual identity will reinforce the initiative's credibility. It will make communication clearer and more accessible, and it'll help the initiative stand out against the city's broader communications. Finally, in September, I'm sorry, not finally, next is phase 2, June through September, how to participate successfully. This is when we're going to focus on ensuring that all eligible voters know how to register to vote and how to vote successfully in the city council election. Our focus will be on harder to reach groups, eligible non-registered voters, and candidates. We will share voter registration messaging and how to fill out the ballot correctly. During this phase, we'll send out the second mailer. We'll include canvassing, student outreach, and digital ads. And then finally, phase 3, September through November, we'll focus on voting successfully. This is when we are going to be amplifying the county messaging and providing reminders leading up to Election Day to encourage registration and ensure that residents are aware of what the ballot looks like and where to vote. Our focus will be on registered voters and candidates, and we'll coordinate with the county elections office to share ballot instructions, deadlines and voting locations. It'll include our final mailer, ads, meetings, door knocking, and social media countdowns. And now I'd like to pass the presentation to Natalie Harnett to discuss our outreach tactics and budget, as well as next steps.
Thank you, Whit. Natalie Harnett, Policy and Project Manager for the city. So I'm just going to go through some more details here when it comes to outreach and engagement tactics. Greg stole my quote, but we really plan on using all of the communication tools in the toolbox. We have some of the fixed deliverables that are going to be done on a monthly basis, and those are listed up here on the screen. And then we'll be doing a bunch of other outreach tactics as needed. We'll also be looking into additional ways of engagement, including possible development of a volunteer program. The core focus through all of the engagement tactics is going to be maintaining a consistent and clear messaging. As Whit mentioned earlier, and what we've heard consistently from council through our survey and our community partners, is that the most effective way to spread this information is going to be through those trusted relationships and partnerships, especially for the harder to reach communities. So we know that people are more likely to trust information that comes from familiar and local voices. So our goal is to get to those voices. That means we'll be relying heavily on our community partners and really on all community members to help us share that clear, accurate, consistent information. The city will, of course, be there to help support our trusted messengers by providing tools, messaging, and staff support so that they can be successful and confident messengers. The City of San Luis Obispo, as you know, is uniquely fortunate to have an incredibly engaged community, and this partner-driven approach is one of the outreach tools that we're most excited about. Through our communications plan, you'll see that we've identified more than 100 community partners, ranging from larger organizations like the Chamber to local Latinx groups, schools, and civic organizations. We also see this as an opportunity to build new connections. So to anyone who is here or possibly watching from home, if you're part of a group, whether it's maybe a neighborhood or apartment complex group or a book club with friends, we'd love to connect with you so we can meet you where you are and or provide the tools that you need in order to help us share this message within your own communities. Measuring and adapting. The plan is intentionally designed to be evolving as needed. So we expect that there will be hurdles and there will be times when we need to pivot, and that's okay. We expect to pause, check in, and adjust the tactical approach as we go, with the plan kind of serving as that framework to come back to. We also will have regular check-ins with our key stakeholders that can help provide feedback on how the outreach is going, and provide feedback on maybe some ways that we can improve our outreach, especially to those historically marginalized communities. We'll support this through monthly meetings and regular internal check-ins as well. And then, as Whit kind of mentioned, success is going to be tracked using those metrics: website traffic, social media engagement, ad reach, meeting attendance, and media coverage. We also have a city email set up, so anyone can provide feedback as we go by sending an email to voting@slocity.org, and that is already live, or finding us at any of the upcoming outreach events or activities that we have planned. Budget. I personally love looking at budgets. So we have council adopted as part of this financial plan a budget of $120,000 for this effort, with $90,000 in the current fiscal year and an additional $30,000, which will be available after July 1st. To date, we've spent about $10,000 on developing our project plan, and then most of the execution of the plan itself is going to be done mainly in-house. So the big budget items are, the direct mailers to all of our residents, along with the print, TV, and radio advertisement. Most of these budget line items are best estimates, so we do expect that some things will maybe go over and some will come under, so we have some contingencies built in as well. So what now? In the coming weeks, we'll be finalizing our branding and materials for the first phase. Then comes launching of phase 1 outreach, including beginning to meet with our community partners as well as form community working group. As you heard from our county clerk recorder last week, we'll also be working very closely with the county to ensure that we can kind of piggyback off of their regular outreach and ensure that our timelines and messaging match up with theirs. We will continue to provide council with reporting progress as we go, and we do intend to come back to you later in the spring with an update on how the outreach is going. With that concludes our presentation, but I think we're happy to take any questions that you might have, and we have more details on our slocity.org, the single vote site, as well as the email address that I mentioned earlier.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, both of you, all of you. I know that there are a couple questions already, but I'll wait to pass on mine. Okay, well then, let me start. So some people have asked me why not Mixteco, and my understanding is we didn't have as many people that spoke Mixteco in SLO City, and that was the reasoning why. Is there anything else I can add to that? Or you would like to add to that?
I also do want to mention, it's my understanding that Mixteco doesn't have, it's more of an oral language and less written communications. And so a lot of our communications will be translated into Spanish. It will all be English and Spanish, but we're really going to focus on kind of visual communications and visual aids for anybody who doesn't speak English or Spanish or read English or Spanish.
Yeah, thank you so much. I appreciate that. And then there was a comment to me about June. We have a lot of things going on in June. Primaries of California, but also in the elections, but also school changes, K through 12, Quest in May and Cal Poly in June. And I noticed we'd be having the different community meetings every single month. Would we consider maybe having 2 in May and skipping June just with all the different things going on? I'm just wondering, I noticed adaptability was definitely a key. So just kind of depending on who's responding, how would that work so we kind of make sure to manage that time period of June being so unique? Thank you. Okay, I heard we could do that. Great, thank you. Well, I'll save the rest of mine. Councilmember Marks.
Oh, thanks. Yes, I'm curious if you considered having a handout in the utility mailers for those people who don't necessarily, how do I say, pay attention to email or even have email, who want to write a check and bring it right here to City Hall and pay it, or actually put it in the mail.
Yes.
Good. Okay, have you contacted the League of Women Voters? They're big on voter registration, to see if they would help us educate city voters.
We're on the list for our community working group, and we are going to be inviting them to participate in monthly meetings. They're also on the list of over 100 community partners, and we will be reaching out to them to help us develop educational opportunities that align with kind of their schedule as well.
All right, so they might also be a good source of volunteers. Have you considered yard signs about vote for one? I brought this up earlier when we were talking about it. People in the city of San Luis Obispo pay a lot of attention to yard signs, so I just want to hope that you'd consider that.
We have heard that idea, and so, yeah, we're happy to consider that as a part of the plan, look at our overall budget. I think the whole approach will actually feel similar to the education that we do typically if, like, say there was a ballot measure on the ballot, and that yard signs are something that can be done as a part of that effort, and so we're happy to take a look at that.
Yeah, and also possibly door hangers. We looked at that, door hangers.
Yes, and I also wanted to mention that will be a portion of our printed materials budget. So we're going to be looking at the budget overall and kind of seeing where we will get the most bang for our buck.
Good, thank you, that's all I have.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Francis.
I was so excited to see that you guys are going to be going out and presenting to groups that want you to come. And I was wondering if the best way for interested groups to get in touch is through the Voting at SLO City email. Awesome. And is there kind of a set number that you're targeting in these groups? So should people try and gather 5 or 10 or 20 neighbors together, or have a certain number in their organization before they reach out?
No, I would say if anyone's interested in receiving more information, the first step is to contact us at the email address, and then we will figure out the best mechanism. It could be dropping off flyers, it could be organizing a meeting, it could be forwarding informational materials that we have electronically. And so I think the right point is to just reach out, and then we'll figure out
No,
the best
you'll
tool
get
for
it
you.
started. Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Councilmember Boswell.
Yeah, just a question about the neighborhoods. Apologies if you mentioned this, but how are we going to select the neighborhoods? Do we have data that shows spatially differentiated voting patterns in lower participation neighborhoods?
Thank you for the question. And we do have some information, the information that's available. And we can kind of narrow down what neighborhoods we want to focus on. And we'll be working with our GIS department or program in order to do that.
Thanks.
Thank you, Councilmember Shorsman.
Thank you. Yes, I'm really excited about this. I've been looking forward to this part of, it's unfortunate that in some ways that we're here and having to do all this education, but it's important. And I love that it's kind of giving us an excuse, if you will, to really do some voter registration as well as just voter education. I think we can have never enough of that. So one thing that I wanted to kind of emphasize is the student populations. I noticed in your timeline you had several items when you were going to be reaching out to certain student groups, and Mayor Stewart mentioned, a couple of them with Cuesta and Cal Poly sort of having different school periods of when they might be the best to approach. And I noticed that Cal Poly and Cuesta weren't always noted in the timeline. So I might take a look at that, just recommend that you take a look at that with an eye to when their school calendars are and make sure that we're hitting those populations at the right time. The other group, a student-oriented group that I didn't see explicitly called out is high school students, and maybe I just missed it, but there's a lot of brand new young voters, and I know there's probably some history classes and some government classes at the high school that may be interested in hearing a little bit more about this and use it as part of their educational curriculum. So just wanted to throw that in there. And then also I'm hoping that because we're about to do the community academy, that there might be a lesson or a unit in the community academy about the single vote.
Yes.
Wonderful, because I think our own residents are our best messengers for some of this, and the Community Academy participants are particularly interested. So I think they would be a great population to tap into. And then last but not least, I know I can speak for myself in that I'm happy to receive any of the informational materials. And I think one of the values of council is that we get around the community a lot. And so I'm happy to come and speak to groups with you, or just have, in my backpack handy every day, some of those flyers to distribute as I'm out in the community as well.
Thank you. Also, this year, Cal Poly and Quest will be relatively at the same time, so that might be a little bit easier, which will be nice. As far as the ballot bowls, though, the bowls where they try to get people registered, I think kind of telling the Cal Poly and Cuesta students in like April might be good, because they get their new staff excited about that for the new student body governments. But I do remember very distinctly about radio back in the Diversity Task Force days, talking about Spanish radio was a great way to get to our constituents. And I noticed Telemundo on the TV, but I didn't see the Spanish radio in the list. So I just assume you're going to be looking at that, but I just had to kind of make sure I mentioned that. The other thing I was thinking about with October is just kind of a highlight between the end of September, beginning October, when mail-in ballots come out. Just, I know I love the visual idea, and maybe that's the direct mail that comes out of that time, because some people love their direct mail or their absentee, get it done and get it over with. Others hold on to it for a while until they get around to turning it in. So it just depends. That I would bring out those two. And then so thrilled that San Luis Coastal is in here. I know in September, I've often come and spoke and done, I forget what it's called, like a salon where they do some education. So maybe staff could come, because I know that'll be election time. So any of us that are running for reelection at that time, we cannot be there, but maybe staff could come and share during that time. With that, almost every school in San Luis Coastal has PTA and boosters. And so I know that's complicated every year to make sure we're part of that, but I think that's, talk about word of mouth. Every parent having that knowledge is really, really helpful. Councilmember Marks.
Yes, I ignored my own vote, sorry. I also wanted to mention the candidates. The candidates are going to be canvassing the neighborhoods and handing out their literature. And possibly if there could be some kind of just small, lightweight, because it's heavy, all that stuff carrying it around, something about the single vote that could be handed out at the same time. Everyone, when they run for office, their basic message is vote for me, right? But if they also could help disperse that information at the same time, I think that would be good. Partly what people do, just my observation, is that they start piling up campaign literature next to the ballot. And then at some weekend, they say, oh, all right, I'm going to bite the bullet, I'm going to vote. And they sit there and they start going through the campaign literature. And so if our literature about the single vote is in there too, it should really help. And then when you're doing your campaign, your candidate meetings and all that, to just help the candidates themselves become a workforce. So, yeah, thanks.
Thanks. Yeah, that candidate orientation is a great place for that. Yeah. Well, I'm sure more than you wanted from all of us. Any other questions or comments? All right. Well, thank you so much for presenting this information. This has been a lot of new, surprising information for the community who hasn't been paying attention to this. So I really appreciate you bringing it in front of everyone. Thanks so much. And with that, we'll say hello back to our city manager for the city manager report.
Mayor, can we just pause for 1 second so I can try and get the cameras and stuff?
Yes. Yeah, I was noticing we had some interesting following or lack of following. We're going to do a 5-minute break. See you in a minute. Well, thank you for the quick break. I think we're back on camera and ready to go. So with that, we will go back to the city manager for her report. City manager.
Great. Thank you. Happy to be here this evening. We've got just a handful of slides. I know some of us were here last week and there were a lot of updates we provided, and just want to catch everyone up on a few more. So first up, we want to remind everybody that our Community Academy is launching soon. Our application period opens on February 2nd at 5:30 p.m. And so we want to make sure people are aware. If you're thinking about it, if you might even just wonder what is a Community Academy, please come on and check it out at slowcity.org/academy. The Community Academy is a free program we offer every other year that provides a behind-the-scenes look at our city government, that provides opportunities to meet our city council members, department heads and staff, as well as to network with other community members. There's also a number of kind of behind-the-scenes tours as well that we offer. It's a great opportunity if you're interested in becoming more involved in city government, if you're just simply curious about what it is that we do here and you want to learn more about how the city works. It's, again, 6 weeks, held on Monday evenings from 5:30 to 8 p.m. It runs from March 9th through April 13th, and we do provide dinner. The program is open to anyone age 18 or older who lives, works, or attends school in San Luis Obispo. Spots are filled on a first-come, first-served basis, so that's part of why we're highlighting it again here. So we encourage people to mark their calendars and apply as soon as applications open. If you have any questions, please email us at slowcommunityacademy@slowcity.org. Next, we want to let everyone know about a new series of events that are coming soon. We're excited to share that we will be soon launching the Belonging Project, which is a free public series that's hosted by our Office of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, and it will be launching next month. The Belonging Project is the next iteration of our Community Belonging series, which was a series of community events held between 2023 and 2025, designed to promote dialogue and create opportunities to expand cultural awareness. This project aims to promote access and belonging for everyone in the greater San Luis Obispo area and will have its first event in late February. We've identified that date up on the slide, February 25th, from 6 to 7:30 p.m. So please keep an eye out for the official announcement that we'll be continuing to roll out, but you're seeing it here. And welcome to please sign up at slowcity.org/subscribe to get all of our latest news. We also want to make sure folks are aware that we just opened a new community survey. We are conducting outreach for an upcoming Complete Streets project for our Foothill Corridor. We're gathering feedback in two main ways. First is an online survey that opened just today and will be open through March 17th. It can be accessed using the website shown up above at Open City Hall or by using the QR code shown on the slide. We'll also be hosting in-person events, including a community workshop and pop-up events in the Foothill area as well. So dates and locations will be announced soon. This outreach is really important as we go about designing what a Complete Streets plan looks like for the Foothill Corridor. It helps us better understand communities' concerns and priorities, and we'll use this input to develop draft design concepts and share those later this year. We also wanted to share a bit of good news. We just really want to highlight, we're proud to share that over the weekend, BBC Travel posted an article listing San Luis Obispo actually first on their list, in their top 10 list of most sustainable small cities in the US. This article marks a significant win in our efforts to share our community's values and focus on sustainability as part of our marketing and public relations efforts. It's also perhaps the first ever mention of the anaerobic digester out at the Cold Canyon landfill. We've got a lot of pumping fists, which is amazing. And all of that hard work that our community has invested in over many years, people are taking note, so I think it's important to highlight it for everybody. They also really highlight our downtown SLO Farmers Market, our walkable streets, mission-style architecture, and proximity to Edna Valley wine country and the coast. It also features a lovely quote from our local winemaker, Brianne Engels of Chamisal. Sustainability is more than a guiding principle, it's a core identity of who we are. It is the lens through which every core decision is made. And I think that really sums it up beautifully. Just so folks know, BBC Travel reaches more than 143 million unique monthly visitors per month, and the UK is a top international market for SLO. So we just want to say yay, and yay for anaerobic digesters. Next, we're just highlighting or running through our list of items that will be on our next agenda, which will be on February 3rd. Wanted to highlight on our consent agenda, we do have an item proposing to seek permission to remove the oak tree near the future SLO Rep Theater project. And so just wanted people to know this is something that we'll be considering approving after a really close look by our arborist. The determination was made that that tree most likely won't survive the construction. And so unfortunately, this is a piece that we need to bring forward for consideration. Our public hearing and business items include an ordinance to amend our campaign contribution ordinance related to making it consistent with the Levine Act, and then a study session to discuss our Laguna Lake Golf Course operations and maintenance and potential direction on future operations there. And with that, that's the end of my report.
Thank you. What a great report. And not often is the digester a conversation piece, but it needs to be more. So really excited. I had someone text me, I think it was last night, say, did you see San Luis Obispo? It was really cool. Any questions for the city manager? All right, with that, we'll move on to public comment. So public comment, just for those in the room who haven't been here, this is for items that are not on the agenda. So if there's anyone that has a public comment, city clerk?
Yes, I have one speaker. It is Sean Harris.
Thank you. Come on up, Sean, you'll have 3 minutes. Oh, no, that's the entire public comment. If we had multiple people, yeah, but 3 minutes is the max. And we'll have it up here. You'll see it on the screen. It'll give you, it'll start to beep at you. Sean, hold on 1 second. Can you press the button? Oh, there you go.
Sure.
There you go. You're good now.
Thanks. Sean Harris, been here since the early 80s. I'm just here to inform the council that I was detained on December 29th by whom I can only presume to be local police and DHS on Bullock Lane, which is the bottom of Laurel Lane. 6:15 in the morning, in the dark, I got into my car. I moved, but I was living at the dumpy apartment complex down there with a large Hispanic population. Got in my car, and a official with a tactical vest and a police patch stuck his face in my car, asked for my ID. Now, I'm a certificate paralegal from UCSD. I have a bachelor's degree in history. So I'd like to think it's hard to fool me, but I got fooled, okay? There was no agency identification on there, no badge. I don't know who this guy was working for. Honestly, I thought it might have been the cartel, because there's a gang activity and, in that apartment complex. I don't know what was going on, and I had to get to work, so I gave him my ID. I didn't argue, and I was frankly intimidated because I was blocked in by a minivan in front and back and on side. 6:15 in the morning, it's dark down there. And so I went to, he said, and I asked why, and he said that there was a report of a stolen car. So, he ran my name in God knows what database, let me go, and I went to work, and I stopped halfway there, called the police department, spoke to the watch commander. He said that they were informed by DHS that they're going to be running some activity in the county and all this, so I assumed it was ICE. My question is about the police. I'm not a genius, but I believe the federal government, they don't have police, they can't, they don't have like police officers. If they do, it's on like state parks and whatnot. And if that's the case, that was San Luis PD. Now, I don't think San Luis Obispo, unlike San Francisco, has a, an overt policy of not assisting in these kind of immigration sweeps. So I just want you to be aware of what your police department is doing. My wife and stepson have green cards. They're brown and Muslim, okay? So these are targets by our current administration. So unfortunately, my wife didn't have to go to work that morning. She was on vacation, and my stepson was on vacation from school. So if they had been detained, when I went, I just decided to go home halfway. I called it a day and went home. When I got there was glass in the street, some lady screaming upstairs, and the window in a car was broken, okay? So I don't know what's going on, and I just want you to know this is your police department, okay? So I don't know what kind of guardrails are in place to prevent our local police from becoming nothing more than an extension of the federal government, and instead of being local police, I consider them royalists during the 18th century in the colonial period of the United States, okay? Redcoats, I don't know who they represent and why they are even doing that, and if that was an actual San Luis PD, and I have questions whether that was, what gives them, who gives me authority to do that? Who's giving them direction to do that? I would ask that you guys curtail that kind of activity.
Thank you. Thank you so much for telling us. And we'll continue with the rest of public comment, and then I'll ask the police department to come and share what they do, just so that the community can know what they do. Any other commenters?
No.
Thank you. I know that Chief Scott is not here today. Deputy Chief Amoroso, would you like to share how our police officers work with or through or around ICE? And also just want to make sure that you give the phone number for anyone who's experiencing anything in our community that might need to give a phone call.
Yes, no problem. Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of council. Brian Amoroso, Deputy Chief for the Police Department. I can share with you, and all of this information that I'm going to talk about is on our website. But California law enforcement agencies are governed by multiple California laws, California Values Act, Truth Act, and Trust Act. And collectively, they prohibit local law enforcement from working with immigration on immigration operations. So the last speaker, I do not know who those individuals were or what patches they had on their vests, but I can tell you it was not the San Luis Obispo Police Department. So if anyone wants to call the police or needs to call the police or is concerned, our non-emergency line is 805-781-7312. That'll get you right to dispatch. And of course, 911 for an emergency.
Thank you so much. Many people continue to ask me, what number to call and where to go and what to do in a situation that was described earlier, so I appreciate that. And I know there are a couple people who have shared with me kind of, thank you, Vice Mayor, for bringing the updated Know Your Rights red cards. And at the same time, when, that feeling of, I can't move my car, what do I do now? Do you have any suggestions for people?
My suggestion would just be to comply with what the individuals are asking of you until you can remove yourself from the situation. And then if you feel the need, contact or come to the San Luis Police Department to report what occurred. And, we can certainly look into what those incidents were.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Francis.
Yeah, thank you very much. And we received some correspondence from Chief Scott writing back to a concerned member of the community, I believe just this morning. And in it, he mentioned that if a member of the public isn't sure who is stopping them, they don't have identifying information, that in that case, we can reach out, or they can reach out to SLO PD, who can help verify who it is, what agency is stopping them, and verify who might be in the community. Is that still the best advice for members of the community?
Sure. Just don't know. These situations are rapidly evolving, so people may not have that opportunity. And so the safest thing to do is to comply and then, when available, come to the police department. Certainly, if they have the opportunity to make a phone call, they're always welcome to call the police department, and we can dispatch an officer to understand what's occurring.
And just to be really clear, if ICE is conducting an operation, SLO PD is never going to be there assisting ICE with that operation.
That is 100% correct.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you for that. Councilmember Marks?
So in a situation such as Sean described, could he have just called 911 and asked for our police to show up and protect him under those circumstances if he didn't know who they were?
Certainly, everyone has the ability to call 911 on their phone. It's impossible to talk about each circumstance and understand what the person is being asked to do at the time by assuming it's a, lawful, law enforcement officer. It would be impossible for me to stand here on a podium and present hypotheticals of when you should call and when you shouldn't call. But if it's safe to do so, you can certainly call. Otherwise, the advice would be to comply with the lawful orders and then come to the police department if you have questions about whether we were involved or felt that somehow, some law was broken, et cetera.
So our police could just witness what is going on and not interfere with the immigration folks, but at the same time, protect our residents, say the residents who are also observing or filming what's going on.
I'm not sure I understand the question.
I mean, if the San Luis Obispo police showed up, what would your role be in that scenario?
In these scenarios, if there's an operation ongoing, we would make contact with whoever their supervisor was on scene, just verify that they are who they say they are. We certainly will not interfere or stop federal law enforcement officers from performing their duty in our city. We don't have the authority to do that. Just want to make that clear.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Schwarzman.
Yeah, I just want to back up, I think, what Vice Mayor Francis and our deputy chief are saying here with the words of our chief from the email that he sent to this constituent. It says, If someone witnesses suspicious activity, kidnapping, harassment, or believes a person might be impersonating law enforcement, please call 911 for immediate assistance, and we will respond. If someone suspects an ICE operation is underway in SLO, your police will respond immediately to de-escalate, maintain peace and security, and work to validate any local or federal warrant or investigation in nature. So that's what the role is of RPD in those situations. I feel like it's pretty clear, and that was nice language, so I just wanted to read straight from that email. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Deputy Chief. We appreciate you.
You're welcome.
City Attorney.
Yes, Madam Mayor, I just want to add, because I think a little bit what I'm hearing from Mr. Harris is, it was dark in the morning and I wasn't sure who was approaching me. And it is certainly, we are certainly within our rights as citizens to ask if there is a warrant, to ask why you're being detained, to film those interactions, and to call the police for assistance if you believe that you are being approached by someone who is not giving a lawful order, as Deputy Chief Amoroso suggested, or you would like someone to verify that. Understanding that people are in understandable fear given what is going on in our country, on the streets of our cities, and essentially the lawlessness of some of the approaches that we're seeing. So understanding that there's a great deal of fear even when the person approaching may be a lawful authority. So I think in our community, certainly respectful interaction, certainly non-aggression, certainly never violence, but also certainly understanding that our community is here to support our residents in asserting their lawful rights.
Absolutely. Well said. Thank you so much. Vice Mayor.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to thank Mr. Harris for coming here and sharing what happened to you, and to say we are very sorry that that happened to you, and I'm sure that's caused some stress and pain for your family, and I'm sorry that we have to worry about that in our community.
Thank you, and I very much agree. We've been having some conversations, and in light of many people having celebrations and recognitions and remembrances and observances of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s birthday, has also, of course, brought to the forefront injustices that are happening today. And people continue to share with me fear and concern and sadness around what's happening right now. And so just continue to help your neighbors, help your friends, and let them know their rights, let them know the numbers, so that they can be as safe as possible. Ask for ID, and don't go with someone that you don't know is lawfully able to take you. With that, sometimes public comment is deeply challenging, and just want to thank you for that. Well, that will move on to consent, and the consent agenda is for items that are not considered to be controversial. There are things just kind of to take care of as paperwork in a sense. So we have a couple items under the consent agenda. Anyone have anything they need to pull or have changed comments on? All right, do we have any public comment on the consent agenda items?
No, we do not.
Oh, sorry, Councilmember Marks.
I'd like to move staff recommendation on the consent agenda.
Great, thank you. Councilmember Shorsman.
I'll second that.
Thank you very much. And can we have roll call, please?
Councilmember Marks?
Yes.
Councilmember Shorsman?
Yes.
Councilmember Boswell?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Francis?
Yes.
Mayor Stewart?
Yes, the motion passes 5-0. With that, we move forward to the public hearing and business items. We have a couple items today, and the first item is our 2025 state legislative briefing, and then we'll get right on to kind of in a similar vein, potential consider invitation to join letter from the County of San Luis Obispo requesting state legislation related to Diablo Canyon Power Plant. So it's a perfect following to the state legislative briefing. And with that, I will introduce Deputy City Manager Greg Herman.
Thank you, Mayor and council members. Happy to be here tonight. I will be brief, but as you know, this is an annual item that we bring before you to review bills from the 2025 legislative session, and it's also an opportunity for the council to appoint an ad hoc committee to consider updates to our legislative platform. I'm happy to hand it over to Natalie for the presentation, who is also the author of several reports for you this evening.
Thank you, Greg. Happy to be here. Natalie Harnett, Policy and Project Manager, and I help oversee the city's legislative platform. So the purpose of this meeting is an annual item that we do to check in with you all on major state legislative items over the last year and to give council opportunity to appoint a 2-member ad hoc committee to review and update the legislative platform for 2026, which will be brought back for adoption in April. So as you've noticed over the last couple of years, we've started emailing council when we send out a lot of our legislative letters. We've been giving you updates throughout the year on stuff that's going on. So in light of that, I am going to try and keep this presentation a little bit briefer than it has been in the past, but I'm happy to take any questions at the end if you have them. So in total, in the 24-25 regular session, 2,300 bills were introduced, with about 900 reaching the governor's desk. He signed about 794 of them, or about 87%, making it to law. The city had a very active year as well, and we advocated on 38 legislative matters. Just a little bit of background for the audience. The city is a member of the League of California Cities, otherwise known as Cal Cities. Cal Cities is an association that represents and advocates on behalf of cities at the state level. So in the agenda report, you'll see that we've linked their annual legislative briefing, which highlights all of the bills and also goes a little bit deeper into some of the information that I'll cover today. Quick budget update. Overall, the state was expecting a significant budget deficit of about $11 billion. Ultimately, it was balanced through budget cuts, deferrals, and the use of reserves. Unfortunately, some of those cuts did include programs that trickled down into local agencies. For example, one of the major ones was the Homeless Housing Assistance and Prevention Grant Program, which was unfunded entirely in 25-26 and is funded again in 26-27, just at a lower level than it had been previously. Taking a look at 26-27, earlier this month, the governor released the preliminary budget proposal. The good news is that it shows that the state is in a relatively good financial position, much better than the Legislative Analyst Office forecast several months ago, which indicated a deficit of about $18 billion. The not so good news is that it also acknowledges that the state revenues are very volatile, and in the future years are likely to experience some large deficit. So because of that, a lot of the funding went into reserves and some of the other rainy day buckets instead of going back into the programs that the cities were hoping that they would. Overall, we'll have to wait and see if anything changes before May, but we do expect that the state grants that we get are going to become even more competitive. On the positive side, voter-approved Prop 14 funding is beginning to be allocated with an initial investment of over $3.5 billion for statewide climate and resilience projects. Staff will be tracking upcoming grant solicitations to assess opportunities that align with our programs and projects that we have planned. So I've broken these down into categories, and I'll highlight some of the major bills, but there's a lot more within the report too. So a lot of these cities are still trying to figure out what the implications are and how best to implement them. A lot of them open doors to new policies or tools, but that also often requires either the adoption of ordinances or program development to fully implement. So for today, I'm mainly going to focus on the ones that the city is required to comply with or things that have been of particular interest over the last year. So starting with housing, as it has been for many years now, the state is doing whatever it can to try and increase the housing supply. This is a shared goal with the city. However, the problem is that a lot of these measures take away the city's discretion to determine if a development is actually good for our community and the adverse impacts that they might have on the community and the environment. So in this case, AB 130 and SB 131 are related, and those basically allow a statutory exemption from CEQA for certain infill housing projects. And AB 893, which is one that requires ministerial approval for certain housing projects near colleges. So for anyone who's listening, it's basically a lot of state measures that make us allow certain development projects, even if they don't comply with what our zoning is. On the community services side, there are several behavioral health and homeless program updates, which are intended to increase accountability and improve oversight for treatment centers. Most of these are good news items and will help our partners, specifically at the county, with our local homeless community. A couple of the changes include allowing homeless individuals to receive medical services in the field through Medicare, and the expansion of eligibility for the existing Care Court program. Moving to governance, transparency, revenue, and taxation, SB 707 is probably one of the most impactful bills. It is the most impactful bill passed last year, and this is going to have real impacts for the way that we hold public meetings. So staff intend to come back to council in May, actually, with a more comprehensive update on this one. But in short, the city must allow for virtual attendance for city council meetings, as well as a variety of other policy changes. Another big one that we are already feeling internally is AB 339, which requires the city to do labor notice requirements for contracting out any service that could be covered under job description of our represented positions. Unfortunately, this does include a large portion of what the city contracts, the city's contracted services, and we've set in place some processes to review RFPs and such as before they go out, but it has led to a slowdown in our procurement process. SB 346 is considered a big win for cities in 2025, and it introduces several new short-term rental tools. These are tools that the city can implement and would be done so through an ordinance. We're working with our finance team to see what that would look like and if it would be worth it for the city to maybe implement some of those tools. For public safety, as you might remember in 2024, one of the Cal City's priorities was retail theft and property crime, addressing those things. This year, it was all about wildfires, and I think that's a trend that we'll see continue for the next few years. All in all, 40 wildfire-related measures were enacted last year, and they range from a variety of new grant programs to changes on how insurance companies can account for things like home hardening efforts and the Zone Zero requirements. For environmental quality, a few to point out, SB 415 was enacted to clean up the big warehouse bill that passed in 2024. With the updates, it's now clear that most of the provisions will not apply to the city of San Luis Obispo, as they're specific for warehouse distribution areas, which we are not. AB 1207 updates and extends the California's cap and trade, or now it's called cap and invest program, through 2046 and creates a new rebate fund, which is intended to help lower energy costs, increase legislative oversight of climate spending, and updates how electric utilities apply climate credits to the customer bills. SB 456 is a kind of small but visible win. This one exempts muralists from needing to have contractors' licenses. As many of you know, a lot of the city's planned painting projects were replaced with vinyl wrapping projects, which are still beautiful, but it'll be nice to be able to have a wider net of vendors to do some muralist work. Lastly, there's a bill that authorizes the sale of 10 additional liquor licenses in SLO County. This is not one that the city advocated for or against, but I thought it might be something interesting to point out for our local business community. With that concludes my report for today, but I'm happy to take any questions, and the action will be for council to either appoint an ad hoc committee or direct staff to make updates for adoption in April. Just a note, this question came up this morning at agenda review, whether the council always does this every year. And the answer is that we have recently, for the last few years, I think, since I've been in this position. But historically, council has not always opted to do that. So it's not a requirement. But yeah, with that, that concludes my presentation.
Thank you so much. I appreciate this. I know that during the Cal Cities, we get some updates on the board and then some of the policy committees, but we didn't really get that here until you started bringing these to us, so thank you for that. Councilmember Marks.
Yes, I have a question about the virtual attendance at council meetings. Unfortunately, this council has had some pretty horrific experiences with people phoning in with really racist, homophobic, antisocial, sometimes profane messages. Is there any kind of control that the council could exert over, in some way, screening or vetting the nature of the message, or perhaps recording it and listening to it before we actually hear it? Or are we just, do we just have to accept whatever comes across?
Thank Deputy City Manager Herman.
Thank you, Councilmember Marks. That's a great question. There are some provisions in the law for what are referred to as decorum standards. We are still tracking the development of those across the state. I know our city clerk is looking at those very closely. Ultimately, they would need to pass First Amendment test to ensure that they're legally enforceable, which means that there's likely to be limited control that we have. There may be other approaches to how we manage that comment that may be novel and could potentially dissuade that. And I think that is something that we'll be looking at. We're planning to come back to the council in May with the full implementation of SB 707, and we'll have our recommendation at that time as to the best way to manage virtual public comment.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Shorsman.
Thank you, Councilmember Marks. I've been concerned about that law too, and how we're going to implement it and try to protect our community from situations that we've had in the past. But my question, there's only one bill that you didn't really talk about that I had some questions about. It was AB 382, which is about lowering speed limits around school zones. And so I've heard lots of complaints over time about speeding around schools, and we're a Safe Routes to Schools community. We try to do the improvements into infrastructure that we can around schools to make them safer. But I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about the definition that they say it's when children are present, we can lower speed limits around schools. Is there any more light that you can shed on what flexibility this will give us in those areas? Or any of you?
I am not like super well versed on this particular one. I'm happy to follow up with more information on that. Yeah, I'm sorry, I can't.
That's okay.
Thank you for that question. We'll definitely have to get a follow-up. Oh, no, City Manager McDonald.
I actually don't have a whole lot more to add, other than I know our transportation team is really up to speed on these changes in the law, and certainly wanting to make sure that we have all those tools available to us. So it will be something that we'll be looking at and bringing back with those certain areas in mind to make our streets safer.
Thanks. Well, I look forward to the opportunities that this could bring us.
Thank you. Councilmember Boswell.
Yeah, I just really wanted to thank Natalie for keeping track of almost 800 bills. I don't know how you keep track of 800 bills. So thank you for doing that. And then just a suggestion on AB 382, maybe we can make sure when the Vision Zero plan comes to us later this year that that's maybe addressed somehow in the staff report.
That's a great idea. Thank you.
Thanks.
Because it's always this interesting question, when children are present, do you mean just in the school hours? Do you mean every play they might have, an activity they might have? What exactly does that mean? So thank you for bringing the question up. Vice Mayor?
Yeah, I was just going to advocate for keeping our new tradition alive and appointing an ad hoc committee and seeing if there's any interest from my fellow council members.
I feel like you would be a great member of that committee.
I am volunteering myself.
Oh, good, okay, she's volunteering herself. Councilmember Boswell?
Yeah, I'm willing to do it again. I did it this past year. Yep. So maybe one more time.
Wonderful, that would be wonderful. Do you need an official vote on that? Yes, we do, okay. Oh, yes, public comment, sorry, I was so excited about that. Exactly. Do we have any public comment?
No, we do not.
Thank you. With that, I would love to move the staff item and bring forth the ad hoc committee with Vice Mayor Francis and Council Member Boswell. Council Member Shoresman?
I will thank Vice Mayor Francis and Council Member Boswell for signing up for the ad hoc committee and second that motion.
Wonderful. Can we have roll call?
Mayor Stewart,
Yes, and thank you, and thank you, and thank you.
Councilmember Shoresman,
Yes.
Councilmember Boswell,
Yes.
Councilmember Marks,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Francis.
Yes.
And the motion passes 5-0. Thank you again. I truly, truly appreciate it. You're not feeling my overwhelming stress on that, huh? Well, for that, I just want to again thank Natalie. You really continue to bring, I know we said about 800 bills, but I mean, this starts out at like 3,000 bills. So just as a little bit of level setting for the community to hear how much that Natalie continues to work on this. And I know with Vice Mayor Francis and Councilmember Shoresman, some of the policy committees we've been on, we continue to watch some in like more specific industries or sectors, but thank you very much. And then next, we're going to kind of continue in the state legislation concept, and we'll talk about the joint letter, potential joint letter from the county regarding the Diablo Canyon Power Plant. So City Manager.
Thank you. I think moving along, as you said, in the theme of Natalie's amazing work, here we are in the next item that she's helped put together. I will go ahead, though, and present some slides setting up the conversation. So first off, just to explain why we're here right now. Back right before the holidays, we received a request from the county to consider joining a letter that is identified as a kind of coalition letter seeking support for legislation related to ongoing operations at the Diablo Canyon Power Plant. The three primary requests, and we went ahead and put the actual specific language in the letter up on the screen here. The first is to support the Nuclear Regulatory Commission's approval process and establish a state licensing pathway to authorize the plant to operate for up to 20 additional years. The second is to enact legislation to address a unitary tax treatment at the plant. Unitary tax is a fairly wonky term that, but at the end of the day, it creates a really big impact for our community, and I'll circle back around on that. And the last is to support the California Coastal Commission's Land Conservation and Public Access Plan, and really, again, trying to hit at that ongoing desire for conservation there. We're really here because the city has taken positions and given direction on the plant and operations there on the second two items on this list. So really express support for fair and ongoing tax support from the plant. The next being conservation and ongoing into the future of the land surrounding the plant, really coming out of the conversation when the plans were for the plant to close and decommission over time. This first item, the city has not taken a position on the length of the licensure, whether the plant ought to be licensed again or have that license extended and to continue its operations. And so we're here before you wanting to bring this conversation forward to see if the city should be added to that county letter. The unitary tax treatment is something that's created a really significant impact for a lot of our neighboring jurisdictions, most specifically the San Luis Coastal Unified School District, which has seen millions of dollars of cuts to their revenue source and had to go through a number of steps to address that deficit. And so a lot of effort has been put behind work around some legislation to address those impacts. And there's been, I know the county and staff at the county and a lot of their consultants have been helping them bring this item forward to really support that partnership in addition to the county itself and receiving that additional tax revenue. We go back to there we go. So there's obviously quite a history at the plant, as well as the city's involvement in its operations. And we'll go back to 2016, 2017, when the discussions around the plant's closure started coming forward. And at the time, the city council actually adopted 5 guiding principles to advance in anticipation of licensure ending in the future. This was coming out of a lot of conversations about, well, what happens when the plant closes? Again, a lot of tax treatment and revenue that our local jurisdictions receives, a lot of economic activity and generation for our local workforce. And there were a lot of concerns about what will the future of our region look like if it closes. And so there were a number of guiding principles that we looked at very specifically and adopted to make sure that we were all aware of what are the main points of focus here? And really, community safety, fiscal mitigation, jobs in our local economy, long-term planning for the facility, and future land use. So we participated in forming a coalition of cities that worked collectively with the county and San Luis Coastal Unified School District, as well as a number of other agencies, to establish a number of these mitigation measures. There were a lot of steps along the way. Ultimately, legislation was adopted to get those things put in place. That resulted in SB 1090 passing in 2018. It implemented some one-time economic development funding and essential services mitigation funds that provided a number of things to address the plant closure. The city received a one-time payment of about $1.8 million to support economic development initiatives, and then has received about $76,000 annually through that Essential Services Mitigation Fund that ended just last year. Again, the intent was to sort of help all of our jurisdictions weather the change that was going to happen when the plant closes. Obviously, the plant did not close, and so we are in a new universe to some degree. And so everybody's in this state of wanting and needing to pick up the pieces and address some of these lingering issues. Back in 2022, when conversations were going on about the potential for the plant to continue operating, a coalition of cities came together once again and signed a letter advocating for 9 key points for the legislature to consider, ultimately getting to SB 846, which was an urgency statute adopted by the legislature that it directed the PUC to allow PG&E to pursue extending its operations through 2030. 9 guiding principles is kind of a lot to summarize here, but they were a number of similar items, right? So safety, land use planning, looking at SB 1090 certainty. So there was a concern that maybe, would somebody have to give the money back that had been paid to our local jurisdictions, really continuing the concern about fiscal mitigation, land conservation, workforce, but then also some concerns about future treatment of the spent fuel on the site, wanting to continue prioritizing renewables as just an energy source in our local region, and then really advocating for a time-limited extension at that time. That was really the last time that we all here in this room talked about the plant operations, about fiscal impacts, economic development, environmental concerns, conservation. And so based on that, we're here today to seek direction on whether we should sign on to this letter. So obviously since 2018 and then 2022, the state authorized continued operations through at least 2030, subject to federal and state approval. So there are a lot of additional regulatory bodies who are continuing to do their work to consider ongoing operations there. Safety oversight, there's, again, that's being provided through those other Nuclear Regulatory Commission, other agencies that are reviewing the plan really closely and looking at whether to consider operations through 2030 and potentially beyond. That includes federal licensing, coastal permitting, and emergency preparedness reviews, and those are all underway. And then really highlighting again our unitary tax dilemma that we're all in. So state law assumed permanent closure, and so if you have a plant out there that's not operating any longer, then it's not being taxed at the same rate or as it was before, but that's not the reality of what's happening. And so we're in this kind of limbo right now that lots of parties are trying to address. And then for the city, our fiscal impacts directly are relatively modest, either under the mitigation measures that were put in place as negotiated, but then going forward. So our unitary tax receipts are much smaller than a lot of other jurisdictions, most notably the school district and the county. So with all of that, the county put this letter together. Their Board of Supervisors back in December reviewed a letter and requested that it be sent, but also that outreach be done to all of the affected other cities and agencies in our region who are particularly impacted by the unitary tax piece of the equation. We know our city is the second to last city to consider this issue. Morro Bay will be considering it on, I believe, January 28th. And so the county intends to send the letter the next day on January 29th. So that's what we're looking at this point. So our recommendation is really just to consider and give us direction on whether to participate in this, in the letter presented by the county. We have a number of other alternatives. One includes drafting an independent advocacy letter. That could be done in a number of different ways. So one could be staff. We could draft a letter that is consistent with our past direction, and no new direction would need to be provided. We would be able to draft that up for the mayor's signature. You could give us direction to write really any kind of letter that you would like us to send with different points in it, and we could do that at any point. Again, I think that end of January timeframe is probably a good idea. We know there's a lot of work happening on the legislation right now, and so there's a desire and a hope for the support to get into the legislature very soon while they're drafting bills and have things coming forward in the near future. This could be in addition to or instead of signing on to the county's letter. So that's another option as well. And then you can decide to take no action on the letter one way or another. And at that point, the letter would move on, but just without our concurrence, city seal or signature by the mayor. So with that, I'm happy to try to answer questions. The world of regulatory bodies and reviews of the tax system, rate setting, PG&E ongoing it's very complex, and so I'll try to hang in and do what I can to fill in any blanks.
Thank you. I also think we have some people in the audience who might be able to help if push came to shove. And I just want to say with the alternative one, we talked about this very briefly because this request came to us December 22nd when most people were on vacation. And instead of making this decision to go ahead and sign off on this based on our current legislative platform, between the city manager and deputy city manager and myself, we said, well, we have to bring this to the public because otherwise they don't get to have the full experience of understanding what is in front of them and what the city is signing off of. And I figured as my colleagues, as council members, you would appreciate that, being that different people share with you their input and insights and thoughts around Diablo and the unitary tax. So that's why we're here today. And with that, Vice Mayor Francis.
Yeah, thank you very much, City Manager. Is there a specific regulatory or legislative deadline that we're up against that's kind of rushing this through? Just curious, why we can't take a little bit more time to answer some of these questions ahead of submitting a letter.
I believe there is. I just don't have the date off the top of my head.
Okay.
Yeah, it was early February. I don't remember the exact date, but the bills will be written by our senators and assembly members early on. And so for us to get this bill in as far as input into their bill, it is now, or we put our input in after they write their bill and say, please change your bill. You're welcome. Councilmember Marks.
Yeah, I'm not sure the city manager or Natalie can answer this, but is there any data or evidence that the Diablo Canyon Nuclear Power Plant would be capable of safely operating for another 20 years?
What I can say is that I do have and was able to find the most recent safety report that's available on the Nuclear Regulatory Commission's website, and that they have been maintaining that and are in the process of reviewing and ensuring that they're doing their due diligence in reviewing the plant for all of those measures that are identified in the plan. But of course, we do have folks, we do have others in the audience who are probably much more intimately involved with that.
So short story is no, we don't have any information whether there's data.
The NRC has it on there.
The NRC has data regarding the next 20 years or just to 2030?
The most recent plan that's posted there is from 2011. And so I believe they're in the process of evaluating where they're at going forward, and in looking at, that's part of their analysis for the license itself.
Another question, has there been any financial analysis about what kind of taxpayer subsidies would be necessary in order to allow the investor-owned utility to continue operating the plant for the next 20 years? Is there any financial data that's available about what impact it might have on the taxpayers?
I don't have any of that at my fingertips, but
Okay.
I would point at the PUC process, the CPUC process, for that analysis and data that would be available.
Okay, that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. And just as a reminder, we are not determining whether the business is going to succeed for the next 20 years. We're just sharing if they were to, we would want to be supportive of a unitary tax. That is all that we are saying today, if we wish to say that. Councilmember Shoresman.
Yeah, I'm going to try to formulate this question, but this process of the Diablo closure, staying open, question of how long it will be open has been complicated, and lots of hearings from different bodies over time, and lots of discussion, and lots of which we as a city have been involved with. So this might be a really basic question, but if I'm remembering correctly, the plant was originally supposed to close in 2025. The letter is advocating for continued operation for up to 20 additional years. I feel like there was, or has been, it's still operating now. Obviously, after 2025, it did not close. So I believe there's an extension period that's been discussed also of 5 years. And I don't know when that 5 years, if that 5 years has started already. when the 20 years would start. Maybe these are detailed questions that are maybe beyond the scope of just deciding whether we're going to advocate for 20 years or not, but I'm just kind of curious about the logistics of some of these timeframes. I don't know if anybody can answer any of those questions.
So I believe it was SB 846 that addressed this timeframe we're in now, which was an extension of 5 years through 2030. So
Okay.
we're in this 5-year extension period, and what's being discussed is a 20 years beyond that, I believe, with the idea in mind that, you know, the thought is that that enables for some greater level of certainty from a planning standpoint and an investment standpoint in the plant itself. But that's where we're at, is we're in this window right now of the short extension, and then what's being discussed is a longer than that extension, up to an additional 20 years.
So up to 2050, basically, right?
Correct.
If the current extension period we're in is up to 2030, then the next one, this 20-year period would be up to 2050, if I'm understanding correct. Thank you, just trying to wrap my head around the dates. Thank you.
And I think the key is up to, and I know we've said this a couple times, but I just want to make sure we say, make that very clear, is it's up to the NRC and the Coastal Commission and CPUC and DABLO and PG&E to all say, this is the magic number, and we don't have to identify that today, luckily, because otherwise then none of us would have the information. Any other questions? All right, do we have public comment?
Yes, we have 3 public comments.
Thank you.
First one is Eric Daniels, then Ben Lippert, and then Rachel Whalen.
Madam Mayor and Council, welcome. Thank you for having me. Good evening. I wanted to thank both the county and the city for being engaged in the question surrounding Diablo Canyon's future. The men and women who work at the plant appreciate knowing that they have partners like you. Regarding the protection of the coastal lands that's mentioned in the letter that the county is asking you to sign on to, I'm happy to report that the issue was satisfactorily resolved with recent action by the California Coastal Commission in December. Their decision supports the continued operation of the plant in alignment with the state's clean energy goals while providing a plan for permanent protection of Diablo Canyon lands. On the matter of the other 2 items that are addressed in the letter, please know that PG&E is committed to working with leaders in Sacramento, both in the legislature and with the governor, if and when these items are brought before us. So I'm not here to advocate for the letter because we don't want to get ahead of what the legislature is going to bring to us to consider. But having said that, your advocacy and the county's advocacy on these matters will certainly help to gain some attention on the subject. While I'm here, if I have a couple of seconds, I'd like to just try to address a couple of the questions that were posed. We're currently in the 5-year extension period now that the legislature authorized in SB 846. At the same time, we are applying for a 20-year license renewal for the license of the reactor from the NRC. That starts at 2025. So if an additional time frame is addressed by the legislature for the plant to operate, that's an if it happens, it would be up through 2045 if the NRC ultimately agrees to that 20-year license. So not 2050 as mentioned. And I can also mention, I'll give a quick statement to address Councilmember Marx's points. Both the NRC and the Diablo Canyon Independent Safety Committee have independently reviewed Diablo Canyon's power plant on many of these safety concerns, and these are ongoing. They don't just stop at one or any particular time. They go on as long as the plant is in operation. The NRC has reviewed a number of questions that have come up regarding seismic risk, reactor vessel embrittlement, compliance with Coastal Zone Management Act, and has denied these petitions repeatedly. In other words, to say that they have no merit and the safety of the plant is continuing to be safe and into the future. So hopefully that addresses your question real quickly.
Thank you, we appreciate that.
Hi there, Madam Mayor, council members, staff, members of the public. Just want to point out, I have the squeakiest chair, so I'm sorry. I sat down and I found the squeakiest chair somehow. My name is Ben Lippert. I'm a resident of SLO. I'm a father of 2 daughters at Los Ranchos and San Luis Coastal Unified, and I'm one of the co-founders of the San Luis Coastal Parent Information Network, which has an unfortunate title that we chose without, it's very long. My co-founders are Annie Agidinka-Frew and Emily Goodman. I brought this book with me today, and I have to say, my 5-year-old Maya wanted to let you know, Daddy, tell them I let you use the book, but it's mine. And it's called Slowly, Slowly, Slowly Said the Sloth. Now, the reason I brought it is because I talk fast about this stuff sometimes, and it's complicated, and I'm trying my best to be clear and concise, but my brain goes really fast sometimes, especially when I'm talking about my kids. Our organization respectfully asks that the City Council not sign on to the county's draft letter as it currently stands. I think you did an amazing job avoiding so many pitfalls when you discussed both unitary tax and the history of SB 1090 and SB 846. So many pitfalls, and you did a really, I mean, awesome. Like, it's really hard to do. The one thing I'd point out is it's three, and I'd say 3.5 really big separate issues. Ongoing operations, beyond 2030, unitary tax treatment, which is again, highly complicated, and then the land use. And those are just 3 really complicated things. Our position has always been, extended operations is something you want to talk about on its own. Unitary tax, I know, is related to that, and I can feel Ms. Ortiz like getting annoyed at me saying this, but I think it just needs to be something you consider separate, in my opinion. We've been in discussions with the county, and I think we're probably headed somewhere pretty good, and I think you're going to see legislation pretty soon. I think you're right in that early February is the timeline for introducing legislation, especially with respect to unitary tax. I think you got to be a sloth. You got to be careful. You need to know what's going to be in that legislation. There are big pitfalls, and hand-wavy language is not the way to get the right funding for our kids, to be honest, and quite frankly, the city and the county and everyone else. I'm just going to take a minute for myself. I had 30 seconds. This is not SLC PIN. This is me talking. This is very heavy. I'm new to all of this. I moved here in 2022. I had no idea what SB 846 was. I had no idea what SB 1090 was. I'm trying to figure all this stuff out, and it's exceptionally complicated. There's a weight that comes with a lot of this. That creates pitfalls. And so this is usually, I say it to everybody else, but come talk to us about this stuff, because there's a huge information gap, and I think it's important that everybody talk about these issues as much as possible. Thank you all so much.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor Stewart and council members. I'm Rachel Whalen, and I'm the Governmental Affairs Coordinator at the SLO Chamber. I'm here tonight to urge the City of San Luis Obispo to sign on to the letter put forward by the San Luis Obispo County Board of Supervisors in support of the continued operation of Diablo Canyon and the reinstatement of the unitary tax. The SLO Chamber strongly supports keeping Diablo Canyon open, and we respectfully ask for your support as well. Diablo Canyon provides roughly 10% of California's electricity, clean, carbon-free energy that is essential to meeting our climate goals while maintaining grid reliability. At a time when California is facing growing challenges related to energy affordability and reliability, losing Diablo Canyon would be a significant setback. Diablo Canyon is also the largest private employer in SLO County, supporting more than 1,300 head of household jobs. These are high-quality jobs that anchor our regional economy and support local businesses, families, and public services. The loss of Diablo Canyon would be detrimental to our community, with ripple effects felt across the entire region. Robust safety protocols and rigorous regulatory oversight, alongside continued advancements in other clean energy technologies, will ultimately determine how long energy generation at this site will continue to utilize nuclear technology. The Nuclear Regulatory Commission has recently determined that Diablo Canyon is safe to operate for another 20 years. This finding reinforces that the plant can continue to operate safely while providing reliable, clean energy and economic stability for our community. In addition, the SLO Chamber strongly supports reestablishing the unitary tax. Its removal has had substantial and ongoing impact on our local school district. Since it was eliminated, our schools and students have experienced reduced resources and increased uncertainty in long-term planning, impacts that directly affect educational quality and the strength of our future workforce. Reinstating the unitary tax through state legislation is a critical step towards restoring stability and fairness for our schools. We are asking for your help in making that happen. By signing on to this letter, the City of San Luis Obispo can play an important role in advocating for our students, educators, and families. The County Board of Supervisors letter reflects a unified regional approach to issues that affect all of us. We respectfully ask that the City Council add your voice and support this effort. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you. Any other commenters?
No, I have no more speaker cards.
I believe our supervisor forgot to put in her slip.
Sorry about that. Good
Supervisor Dawn
evening.
Ortiz-Legg.
Yes, I am Supervisor Dawn Ortiz-Legg, and I represent District 3, which it includes part of the city, and it definitely includes Diablo Canyon Nuclear Power Plant. Thank you very much. In the effort of collaboration, regionalism, the county wanted to bring this letter forth to all the cities and those signatories to the original 1090 legislation. This was a 5-0 vote at the Board of Supervisors in December. The timing is important to understand here. Why? A lot of things have been happening all of a sudden, in a sense, but not really. Waiting for the 5-year extension, all those boxes to get checked happened. Waiting to see the thing that some people cared about the most, which was the land conservation and the public access, that box got checked. And then, as was noted, plant operates safely now, and with the NRC's 20-year approval that just was finalized, that box got checked. So everything's starting to happen in rolling forward. Also, in the backdrop of all of that, of course, is the fact that the California Public Utilities Commission just asked for 6,000 more megawatts of power to be added to the portfolio. So it's very clear that the state is going to need more power. It's very clear that here we have one of two solutions for a baseload carbon-free generation. There's Diablo Canyon Nuclear Power Plant, and there is hydro. We don't have any hydro here. We have hydro in the state, but it's not as robust as we would like to see. But this is really important for us to meet SB 100 goals. That's 100% carbon-free by 2045. That's going to be very difficult for the state to meet. So this is why all these things are happening legislative-wise, is that we really have this energy demand. Probably the decommissioning was probably a forecast that wasn't well done, looking back. And it happened, but now everybody understands, and now, of course, with the AI demand, that just makes it all the more. With that, you have to know that from 3CE perspective, which you're a member, which I'm on the board, which we're all doing, is that the cost of renewables has become very challenging to execute, very challenging with battery, and without battery, without generation, it makes it impossible to meet those goals. So as a city that really looks at sustainability and carbon-free energy, this is a very important piece. I think that the other things I would like to note here is that this is one of the most studied plants in the entire world, that there is not a plant that has more triple redundancy of study than this plant. And it's a plant that we're very proud of here in San Luis Obispo, and we're going to continue to be proud of it. And I think that that's one of the things is that we at the board felt very important about not having an old narrative and coming with a new narrative. So again, we look forward to your vote. 5 other cities have joined us. It's up to you.
Supervisor.
And I thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment?
No, that was it.
Okay, thank you. Bringing it back to the council, Vice Mayor Francis.
Yeah,
Oh,
wanted to thank all of the members of the public for coming out and speaking today, and wanted to check with my colleagues here on a temperature check on potentially tackling a side letter via an ad hoc. Obviously, PG&E is an important community partner, but I'm a little concerned that this letter gets us out beyond our skis, and wanted to dive a little bit into some more specificity on some issues like.
before we jump into that, City Manager had a comment from all of the commenters.
Sorry, I
Please.
just wanted to quickly clarify the deadline that we're looking at in the state legislature is February 20th for introduction of bills. So
Great.
just one note on the timing we're looking at.
Appreciate the timing.
Thank you.
That gives us a little bit of wiggle room then. There's just some questions around the cost impact of the additional extension, and just ensuring that the obligations of the 5-year extension are met before we're negotiating a 20-year extension, looking at all of the community benefits like public safety, emergency response investments that we might need to look at if we're going to extend another 20 years, as well as additional conservation opportunities. I know that Senator Laird is sponsoring legislation right now that's going to focus on the unitary tax issue, but that's only going to take us through 2030 and wouldn't account for continued operations. So I'd like to have a little more clarity on that particular issue, as well as clarity on a plan for spent fuel operations, if operations continue, and just want to be a little bit more specific in our language before signing on to an advocacy letter.
Thank you. Councilmember Boswell.
I'll have to think about the ad hoc committee. I think one of the interesting things about the ad hoc committee is we might be back here in 6 months being asked to take a position on the legislation itself. Once the legislation is written and introduced, I'm sure there's going to be a lot of interest in taking positions on that. So there might be a longer term buy-in for an ad hoc committee to be prepared to both short-term and long-term. It's also the case that we could simply wait to comment on the legislation. I don't think what the city of SLO has to say is going to matter much in terms of how this piece of legislation is written in the next 2 weeks. So we could take more time and simply wait for the legislation to come out. And that would give us some more time to do some more work if we wanted to do that. I will say, however, that taking a position on number 2 and 3 in the letter, I'm fine with, as has been noted in the staff report. Those are issues that are consistent with our current legislative agenda and our past positions on the power plant. I'm not comfortable taking a position on number 1, either for or against the plant, but I simply believe we should take no position on extension of the plant operations. And I think that for a variety of reasons, but there's a couple that are most important. One is that this is an issue, most people I know have a position on this issue and have a strong position on this issue, which is not the case with every piece of public policy that comes in front of this board. And for some people, it's an existential issue in how they approach it. For me to feel comfortable taking a position on an issue like that, at a minimum, I would need to see an open public forum with more educational opportunities and opportunities for the public to comment further. And frankly, I'd want a statistically valid survey of the community's position on the power plant. It's that big of an issue to take a position on. Secondly, I would simply want a much more detailed briefing on if I'm going to take a position on whether a nuclear power plant should continue to operate. That's currently above my pay grade in terms of my level of expertise about a whole range of issues, particularly as they affect the city of San Luis Obispo narrowly. There's a broader set of issues, but there's a very much a set of issues around us in terms of impacts to electrical rates for our residents, risk associated with energy operations and energy storage, impacts on employment and our economy, impacts to GHG emissions reduction goals, which are important to us and have been mentioned. There's just a lot of things that I feel I would need much more briefing on to take a position on this issue. So, as of today, I would not take a position, and I really question whether we should at all at any point in the future. The issue is one that has a relatively smaller impact on the city as a municipal entity, but yet is one that is highly divisive in the community. Thanks.
Thank you. Councilmember Marks.
Well, I I agree with my colleagues Boswell and Francis who've spoken so far. I think that an independent advocacy letter supporting points 2 and 3 as they were mentioned on the slide. Specifically, we're talking about the 5 guiding principles in 2016, 2017, and then the 9 key points in 2022. And then I would support an ad hoc committee to draft a letter that also would bring up additional points that are relevant to this city's well-being. And I'd be willing to serve on that with somebody. I do have to say that I'm also, this is a bit of a policy thing, but taking a position on a specific project is something that the city has avoided assiduously since 1998 that I've been tracking what the council has done. And I think it would be a very poor policy on our part to start cherry picking specific projects. As Councilmember Shoresman pointed out, the plant was built to last 40 years, which was up in 2025. There was a fiscal analysis by PG&E that it would not pencil for the investor-owned utility to upgrade the plant to continue operating. And so they decided to decommission in 2025. They did not decide to apply for an extension because it would be too expensive for them. So where's the money supposed to come from? It's not going to come from the PG&E shareholders because their whole point is making a profit. I wanted to also say that safety is a very important issue. I agree with Councilmember Boswell. Our city residents are very divided on this issue. And I believe that it's also not within our jurisdiction to make analysis, make any kind of opinion about the nuclear power plant continuing to 2050 or 2090 or, the year 3000. I mean, whatever. It's really not something that we're equipped, and I believe it's outside of our jurisdiction. We have also been very deliberate about not taking on issues that are outside of our jurisdiction. I think it is very important to support the unitary tax. It's unconscionable that the plant is continuing to operate, but is not subject to tax at all under the assumption that it's already been decommissioned, which is not true. It's like a fiction. So they should not just pay unitary tax, they should pay back taxes, as far as I'm concerned. And then in terms of conservation, I appreciate what the Coastal Commission has done, but it's not good enough, in my opinion. We need to have more comprehensive conservation measures. So that's my point of view. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Councilmember Shoresman.
Thank you. Gosh, it's interesting to listen to what everybody says. I think there's overlap in some of our opinions, but not everybody is seeing it exactly the same way, which I always find interesting. about our deliberations. I want to thank the public commenters who shed some light on some things and also just pointed out some of the complexities of all this. And thank you to staff for answering some of my questions in advance and agenda correspondence as well. In regards to the letter and the three main points, I think in the county's letter, I'm hearing some things that I mostly agree with. I think that the county did a really good job of simplifying down some very complex issues into 3 bullet points that are going to be easy to digest and people can kind of get behind. And clearly some of our colleagues in other cities and jurisdictions have already. And so I appreciate that they've taken the lead in that. I am very supportive of the conservation, the bullet on the conservation elements. I think I'm hearing similarly, more generally from others that we're all in support of that, and it is aligned with our legislative platform. So that bullet point is not a stretch for me. The unitary tax seems like a simple one too, but the more I talk to folks about it and the more I start to, it's like peeling back the layers of an onion. It gets very complicated very quickly. And I think I think some refinement in the language would be good. And I think I would like to see that in a letter of our own that kind of gets at that a little bit better. I also am hesitant to support the 20-year, up to 20-year extension the way it's written right now for some of the same reasons that my colleagues have mentioned. I feel more comfortable with the way that we've approached the other advocacy letters that we've done in the past, focusing on things like safety, planning, lessening financial impacts on the community, looking at the duration specifically. It's hard to put a number on that for me, just from a gut check level. So I can recognize the timeliness, the importance of the timeliness on this, and I think it would be good for us to do, if we are going to do a side letter, as you called it, or our own letter, I think it would be good to do it in conjunction with the county's letter so that we can all come at this around the same time and in advance of the legislation. But I would be supportive of drafting our own letter that kind of tweaks at some of the elements a little bit more. And I'd be happy to sit on an ad hoc too, if that's what we decide.
Well, thank you so much. This is why we brought this here today, is I had a feeling there would be some different input than we have heard from our neighboring cities in the county. The timing of this is tough because really, I think Senator Laird would want to hear from us sooner than later as he is putting together his his bill. And, originally the letter came to us on December 22nd, asking for us to approve or not by January 10th. So as far as going along with the county letter, I don't think it will go along with the county letter, but we are definitely welcome to write our own side advocacy letter in whatever way, shape, or form. So not to cause any problems with that. I just want to make sure we're not delusional that it's going to go with the county letter at this point. I think that alternative 3 was the original one of the alternatives, which is write a letter in accordance to our current legislative platform. And that seems to be more along the lines of what everyone, the commonalities I'm hearing, which is supporting the unitary tax to a point, making sure we highlight safety, making sure we highlight that we need the energy. But it doesn't seem like we have alignment on the up to 20. So for me, knowing that we have almost 10% of California's energy comes from Diablo, I cannot see us supporting it going away. NRC has already said they agree with the safety for the next 20 years. So I think we have this challenge right now, which is safety has been brought up numerous times, and safety has been cleared by the NRC, which is the Nuclear Regulatory Commission that identifies safety, and an independent safety commission. So I think as far as if we want more from the NRC, or we want more from Diablo, we want more from somewhere with the task force that will be created from, I've heard at least 2 people here interested in being part of that task force, maybe 3. Please give some guidance onto what that looks like, what that safety looks like, because there's been a national agency and an independent commission that's already said safe. So not saying it is safe or not, I'm just sharing that input. So at this point, I would suggest for us to go with alternative 3, where staff would put together a draft letter along with our current legislative platform to move forward what makes sense that we've all agreed on as a community so far. And then the task force to continue on, because when that policy comes forth, or sorry, that draft bill comes forth, we're going to need to be ready to have some sort of response. So that's my 2 cents. Councilmember Marks.
Thank you. Well, yes, I think, I don't know where you got alternative 3, that alternative draft and independent advocacy letter. Is that the same thing?
There was on your, I think it was on, maybe it was the general correspondence, or maybe it was.
Well, at any rate.
Anyway, it doesn't matter.
I would like to, at some point, make a motion that we draft an independent advocacy letter limited to the elements consistent with the city's adopted legislative platform.
Sorry, I should have said alternative 1. That's the one I'm talking about. Sorry.
Is that alternative 1?
Yeah, sure.
Well, I'm not numbering it. I'm just going with the staff report that we received for the agenda today, which is draft an independent advocacy letter limited to the elements consistent with the city's adopted legislative platform. So I think there's at least a majority agreement to that. And then the question is, how do we feel about an ad hoc committee? One thing that has been suggested is that, or that the city manager suggested when she gave her report, was that the staff put together the letter in that, in that mode, just limiting the to the elements consistent with our adopted legislative platform to be signed by the mayor. Now, do we want to do that, or do we want to go ahead and do an ad hoc committee? That would take more time, it'd be more in depth. I'm open to either alternative, really, but if we go for the ad hoc committee, I'll be willing to serve on it, or defer to my colleagues if there are 2 people who also want to do. We can't have 3, so, yeah.
Councilmember Schwarzman.
I have a question and a response to what you were saying. So I was thinking that the ad hoc committee, maybe the letter could not go out at the exact same time as but in close relationship. I was thinking an ad hoc committee could meet next week, starting with a basic letter draft, a draft started by staff and then tweaked by the ad hoc committee, and then would need to be approved by us as a council. So it could probably come back quickly, maybe first meeting in February, and then go. Maybe that's overly optimistic, but.
I don't know if you've seen our agenda forecast.
Yeah, maybe it could be on consent. It might get pulled, I understand, but this is a controversial issue, but that's the timeline that I was sort of thinking of. The question that I had was, I guess it's to Councilmember Boswell, about the need for the ongoing nature of the ad hoc committee. I was thinking in terms of just an ad hoc committee now to draft the letter, and then I suppose if we needed an ad hoc committee in the future, it wouldn't necessarily need to be the same one to review the legislation, but just trying to get clarification of the reasoning behind extending the ad hoc committee longer.
Councilmember Boswell.
I don't think we necessarily need to do that. All I was thinking is if we anticipate that we might be asked or want to take a position on the legislation, which will follow a few months down the road, that we should be doing something between now and then to prepare ourselves to take a position on that legislation. I mean, this came to us very fast, right?
It did.
I mean, it's kind of odd that we've have not a lot of people in the audience and not much correspondence on this. I think it's because a lot of people just don't even know it's happening. That'll change as the legislation becomes increasingly realistic. So they don't need to be the same. We can talk about it. If we come back with a letter from the ad hoc committee, we could talk more about it then, or just agendize it for a future council meeting. But I do feel like I don't want 30 days to take a position on a letter again this summer.
Okay, so thank you for that clarification. I'll just close with, to Councilmember Marks's point, I would be okay, I think, with just focusing on the letter on the two topics that we are more or less agreed on and excluding the discussion of the 20-year timeline from our letter, if that's what we all agree on. I do still think there could be some tweaking of the language around the unitary tax. I think there's a lot more to that needs to be described a little more clearly.
City Manager.
Thank you. Just to throw out another alternative, our platform that we just talked about, we can certainly roll this into a specific piece of our legislative platform. So that's another opportunity for us to get direction from the ad hoc committee on legislation that we might want to be advocating for, and it can call out anything related to the power plant into the future. So there's a few different ways, we thinking that we might want to, and we identified it as an alternative, we do actually have a draft letter that pulls those last two items from the county letter, since they were consistent with what we've talked about before. We have that prepared. It would be, fairly simple for us to put it together and send it out. If we are looking at an ad hoc committee that wants to dig into more of the details on unitary tax and, any more of the specifics, if there's more time, the February 20th is that next deadline for the state legislation. We have 2 meetings between now and then. Our agenda is we basically have a week to get a letter done and on for the next meeting in February, on February 3rd. So just from a timing standpoint, just want to put that out there too.
Thank you for that additional clarification on dates. Vice Mayor Francis.
Yeah, knowing that there's already a draft letter in existence, I do like the idea of getting a couple of additional sets of eyes on that draft letter, just to give a little feedback on the specificity and nuance on these two issues, particularly if we've got another letter coming from the county that's advocating for that longer time frame. Even the conservation issue, I think, should maybe address that there's advocacy happening for a longer time frame, and our desire to see, more conservation if the plant is to continue to run longer, and more negotiation around community benefits and unitary tax issues if the plant were to continue to run. But I'm also in favor of just addressing those last 2 bullets. It sounds like there was some consensus around that. But I would love for us to get a little bit more in the weeds on that. Not too in the weeds. I know we don't have a lot of time, but just enough to make sure that we really get our point across here.
So I'm hearing a task force of some sort to look at this letter, which therefore then would provide that draft letter on the 3rd or the 17th. Is that what I'm hearing, City Manager?
I think it depends on the direction you'd like to provide. I mean, you all could select a couple of council members to review the draft that we've gotten and provide feedback and direction on the content, and we could go ahead and that could be final, send it to the mayor for signature. But if you'd like it to come back to you all for review and a final approval on a future agenda, I think we could do that on the February 3rd meeting on consent.
Great, that would be wonderful, thank you. So I heard at least 3 people that wanted to be on the ad hoc committee. So how are you in a Rochambeau, Vice Mayor?
I'm going to defer to my colleagues and let them take this one.
All right, so I heard Councilmember Marks. Is that Councilmember Marks and Councilmember Boswell, or Councilmember Shorsman? Councilmember Shorsman and Councilmember Marks. Yes? I feel like I'm at an auction.
Yes.
Okay, I'm hearing a yes from Councilmember Shorsman and Marks. Thank you so much. So can I have a motion? Vice Mayor.
I would like to move the creation of an ad hoc committee to look at the 2 issues that are already outlined in our legislative platform and bring this letter back to us on the 3rd on the consent agenda.
Great, thank you so much. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Councilmember Marks seconds,
Yes.
and roll call, please.
Vice Mayor Francis?
Yes.
Councilmember Marks?
Yes.
Councilmember Boswell?
Yes.
Councilmember Shorsman?
Yes.
Mayor Stewart?
Yes, and the motion passes 5-0. Thank you for the deliberation. One of the things that we often get is, you guys are all just 5-0, but the conversation is often different, difficult, and interesting to get to the point where we're going to our next steps. So I appreciate the ad hoc committee for looking at this letter, and I appreciate the staff for the amazing turnaround. I remember getting the call for the 22nd saying, what? So thank you for that, and unfortunately coalition building takes a little longer, but we appreciate being able to involve the city more, the city as a whole more. So thank you very much. I hope that anyone who was listening to this, please share your comments sooner than later. And with that, let's take a 10-minute break. I will see y'all back just before 8:10. Well, hello, everyone. We're going to return back to our regular meeting, and we will have the conversation around the San Luis Obispo County Council of Governments presentation on the local roads first proposed ballot measure. With that, I will forward it on over to Mobility Services Director, Jennifer Rice.
All right, good evening, Madam Mayor, members of the council. Jennifer Rice, Deputy Director for Public Works for Mobility Services. And the item before you tonight is a presentation from Kendall Flint with DKS Associates on behalf of SLOCOG. And James Wordley from SLOCOG is also here to provide support as well. And they'll be presenting on a potential transportation sales tax measure being considered for the November ballot. The recommendation tonight is to receive the presentation and provide comments. I do want to bring attention to an agenda correspondence that was sent out earlier today, and it included the most up-to-date version of the draft transportation expenditure plan and the draft ordinance, and that was dated January 16th, 2026. These 2 documents have continued to be updated and refined to incorporate input received from various jurisdictions as SLOCOG has been presenting across the county. So likewise, tonight is this council's opportunity to provide comments on that draft plan that Kendall will be presenting on. There is potential that as this progresses, an item will be coming back to the council on March 3rd to approve the expenditure plan and ordinance before it would go to the SLOCOG board for adoption April 1st. So with that, I do want to thank Kendall and SLOCOG staff for being here today and hand it off to Kendall for the presentation.
Well, thank you very much. And good evening, Madam Mayor and members of the council. Again, I'm Kendall Flint with DKS Associates, and it's my pleasure to be back here tonight to talk with you again about this measure. I think some of you may recall we were here in 2016 with the measure. Very nice to see you again, Councilmember Marks. What we are looking at today, let me make that move. It did not move for me. I'll let you move it there. Okay. First of all, I think most of you know the Council of Governments is basically made up of the 7 cities within San Luis Obispo County, as well as the county itself. And their board, basically representing all of the residents and businesses here in the county, meets regularly on transportation issues and large transportation investments that are happening throughout the county. One of the things that is unique about this agency is that it does have the ability to create an expenditure plan and become what's called a self-help county. And currently, there are a number of those that I'll talk about in a moment. We are not one of them. You may recall that in 2016, we missed that opportunity by about 450 votes. We were making the same face, Councilmember Marks. It was not fun, but we're in a different place now. Now, one thing that I think is very important for people to understand is that transportation is expensive. And I think a lot of folks are concerned that, what happens when we're already paying high taxes at the gas pump with SB1, et cetera, et cetera. And we do see money from SB1, but frankly, it's not enough. And I'll talk about that a bit more in a moment. Currently, we have a number of needs here in the county that have been identified through both the US 101 South Mobility Study and the US 101 North. And there's a small amount that is funded, but right now, badly needed investments both in northbound interchanges, southbound also interchanges, there is no money for that. And without that type of investment, we would be unable to address the needs of the region, both from an economic standpoint and frankly, from a quality of life standpoint from residents and folks that live here and have to be on these roads all the time. So one of the things that is important to note, that money that comes from gas tax, this is the amount that's been coming over the last 2018, 2022, and 2026 projected. These funds are going down. They are not going up. And one of the reasons for that, of course, is the prevalence of electric vehicles, but it's also about the cost of living and the cost of driving cars in general. After 2020, a lot of people realized that they'd be able to work from home, and a lot of people took advantage of that. And so on the one hand, that's been great for the environment. On the other hand, it's not great when you're trying to generate tax money from gas taxes. Now, in that same time frame since 2016 and now, you can see here the transportation sales tax that was collected by our neighbors in Santa Cruz County, Monterey, and Santa Barbara. Now, Santa Cruz, Monterey, Stanislaus, and Merced were the 4 counties that were able to successfully pass measures in 2016. You can see here the millions of dollars they've been receiving every year based on those revenues when SLO County has not. I think the bigger issue here is that they have been able, like the other 25 self-help counties in California, to leverage both state and federal funds to increase the impact of that money. So in Santa Cruz, as an example, they won $350 million worth of grants during that time period. Monterey, 227. Santa Barbara, almost $800 million. So when you look at what we could have done during that period and did not, it's well north of $500 million, which would have been a substantial investment in badly needed local road maintenance, infrastructure improvements, transit services, and what in the area. Now you can see here that is not something that is good. Now, one of the things that we've been doing differently from 2016 is taking a closer look at what the individual jurisdictions wanted to see. What we learned in 2016 and years following is that while each city did prioritize local road maintenance, each had different ideas about things like bike and pedestrian trails and the percentage of funds that should go to those. Ditto for transit, where here in SLO City, we might see more people using public transit, less so, let's say, in Paso or other areas. So over the last several years, both the SLOCOG staff and my team and also others have been out in the community, 70+ meetings, ongoing presentations. We've been doing focus groups throughout the county and polling. We've done all kinds of things to find out what people really wanted. And that's why the measure that you see tonight, which has been developed and refined over the last several months, is very different than what we proposed in 2016, really allowing the local agency, the local jurisdiction, to retain the most control over the funds that come to it locally. So the way that the split works right now is that for every year when we generate a 0.5 cent sales tax, it's about $35 million a year. 55% of that money would come back to the local agencies, that's the cities and the county, for local road repairs, safety, that's safe routes to schools, bike, pedestrian. In this work, though, it also includes if you wanted to increase, for example, bus services, or you wanted to buy a new bus or increase something, you could do that. So it allows for that maximum flexibility. It can only be used for transportation projects, so it cannot be used for police, fire, parks, anything else. Now that half-cent also goes to regional projects. And one of the things that we heard very loud and clear, not surprisingly, that especially in the unincorporated areas, there was a concern about, what's in it for me? It's all going to go to SLO. It's all going to be in the metro areas. What about us in Cambria and San Simeon, Oceano, San Miguel? So one of the things we looked at is separating the county into 4 regions and then developing regional pots, which means that for those regional projects, of which 40% of the money would go, they would be by sub-region. So each area gets a set aside, again, based on population, and then those agencies working with the county and working with SLOCOG would identify those projects that were best suited to move forward. Now, these are projects that are already included in the adopted regional transportation plan, which you all participate in along with the other cities. So they're not random projects. They're things that have already been vetted, had already been looked at. One thing to keep in mind on the regional projects, I know that $35 million and the $14 million a year seems like a tremendous amount of money. It's not. When it comes to actually building something, an interchange or freeways, it's really not that much. But what we use it for is to get everything shovel ready so that the environmental review, all the planning, all the other things that we need to do can work, and then use that to leverage those larger funds that we get from larger grants from both the state and the Fed that can actually implement those types of projects. Now, I think the most important line in this graph is what the city of San Luis Obispo would see every year. And so this is basically $3.2 million for your local road repair, local maintenance, and what you can do with what you like. For those that are watching that may have concerns, the unincorporated area of the county also gets funds. We've been working with the county on what the best approach of that would be, and they've opted to go with by supervisorial district to ensure that every section gets something. So in case you have friends or family somewhere else, they're also going to get their share as well. Now, when you look at the bottom of this graph, you'll see 2 other line items that go for 4% for senior, disabled, veterans, mobility improvements, and administrative costs. Now, through the polling and through all of the engagement, but specifically through measurable statistical data, we know that folks have a real desire to make sure that there's either subsidized or underwritten services for that target group. Overall, transit did not poll exceptionally well everywhere. In some places it did, and in some places it didn't. So the idea here was to set aside funds that we know people wanted to see specifically because they called it out, and then let the individual agencies decide within their regional dollars or within their local dollars if they wanted to use more or less funds for transportation or transit services. The administrative costs, I'll go over in more detail, but that's really to make sure that this contract between the voters and these agencies is met with oversight, audits, independent audits, and all those kind of things. So the big question we also have is, how is this going to work? We have implementation guidelines and safeguards. So first of all, how will the money be spent? The idea in the plan is that this is a transparent process so that residents would be able to come to the city as you go through your normal deliberations for budget hearings and when you're developing your capital improvement plans. They'd see the line item that was from measure, whatever the name of the measure is going to be, what letter it might be, moving forward. And that there would be, of course, opportunities for them to see how it's been used in their areas. How the money is being spent, there would be a citizens oversight committee made up with 1 individual from each city, as well as 5 from the supervisorial districts, not in the city limits, but in the incorporated areas, to make sure we're not double dipping anywhere. They'd be looking at annual reports that the cities would provide. We'd be working with staff. And again, these are not intended to be overdoing it. It's just at the end of the day, much like we do Caltrans grants or anything else, we have to show where the money went. People would like to know, if you have tax money, how you've spent it. It's a pretty reasonable request. So they'll be looking at that. One thing that I think is also interesting, and we borrowed on this one actually from our friends in Orange County Transportation Commission, we included a comprehensive review program. So since we're looking at a 30-year measure, that every 10 years there would be an opportunity to kind of open it up again and see if there are new things out there that we need to amend. not changing the percentages, but, you know, if flying cars show up and that's something we want to make available, okay, we can do that, right? One thing we get a lot of questions about, and I'm sure that some will come up tonight, is maintenance of effort. This is the same language that's required by California state law as regarding SB1, which is the gas tax. And what it says is that the city needs to continue using the funds, or that it is already on a normal year allocated for maintenance and operations for their road maintenance programs consistently. They can't replace that with the tax funds. It has to augment it. So if you had one year, I know it happened in Grover Beach in Atascadero, where you had an unusually high year of investment, that's an exception. We're talking about the specifics of year to year that's normal, and we have 3 years that have been carved out for that. That is not a negotiable issue. It is required by state law that the maintenance of effort goes in there. So as I mentioned, this is going to be a 30-year measure as it's currently envisioned. The cities, of course, would have to provide the information to the Citizens Oversight Committee. They would make regular presentations to both the SLOCOG board and members of the public. Those would be open as well. There is a language in there that would allow bonding. We are not certain whether or not the SLOCOG board is going to want to move forward with that or not. There's some pretty strong parameters about what can and can't happen with that, but just so council is aware, if for whatever reason and time goes by that there was another citizens initiative that said, well, we're going to repeal this, it would not relieve the bond indebtedness. So any bonds that were issued would still have to be repaid by the agencies and the underlying members. So it's just something to keep in mind. They can be amended by at any time with a 2/3 majority vote for the general public. So once this is locked in, that's it. So our process has really been to go back to everybody, that's what we're doing now, and see what refinements need to be made. What does it cost? It's about $2.50 a week for the average person. This is taxes on goods, not taxes on medicine or groceries or rent or anything like that. But it's just basic things. You know, if you buy a shirt, if you go to a restaurant, if you buy a car, these are all things that would be covered. Right now, you are our last presentation for councils. And next week we'll be meeting with the Board of Supervisors. And then on February 4th, we'll be taking back the, let's call it the draft final ordinance and expenditure plan for the SLOCOG board. At that meeting, they'll have an opportunity to determine whether or not they would like to adopt that plan and make that the land that they want to move forward on. And at that point, we would then make arrangements to come back to this body, as well as the other cities in the county, for a or nay vote on the plan itself and on the ordinance to say your support. If that happens, then at the April 1st meeting, the SLOCOG board would then move forward to request that the Board of Supervisors places this on the ballot in November. At this time, that election is scheduled for November 3rd, and it would require a 2/3 majority in order to pass. So with that, I'm available to answer any questions you might have on the process or what's in the expenditure plan or the ordinance, and looking forward to your questions.
Wow, thank you. That was the fastest I could have ever imagined this to go through, but yet thorough and awesome. Councilmember Marks.
Yeah, could you please go back to that chart where you were looking at the distribution with the cities and also yeah, thanks, that's it. So I'm interested, if it's going by supervisorial districts, I assume that when it says North County, that's both District 4 and District 5.
So great question. There's two pots in this. So when you look everything that's above the 55% and you see unincorporated area there, that is the unincorporated time. That's where the supervisorial districts will come into play, only in the local road match, right? And in the 40%, those divisions, which let me come back to that map so you can see it. For example, in the central area, this will include the city of San Luis Obispo as well as Avila, right? And South County would include Arroyo Grande, Oceano, Pismo, and Grover. So all those things are done geographically this way. And it kind of broke down into needs of the types of improvements that people would like to see, and sort of a balance of not only population but expenditure. So that's how it would lay out.
Okay, well, going back to that that earlier, yeah, here you go. So something like the Prado Road interchange, it's regional, but it's in the central county. but it serves everybody because frankly, there's more, there's more commuting to and from the city of San Luis Obispo and also Cal Poly than any place else in the county. So our roads, by our roads, I mean the roads in the city, but also in the central county, just get more traffic from everybody. So I don't know if that's taken into consideration. It's a smaller amount, but in terms of vehicle miles traveled, or however you want to.
It is. So when we look at a regional project, we think about regional projects are those that have benefit or impact to multiple communities. And Prado is an excellent example of that because while it exists within the city limits of the city of San Luis Obispo, it also serves people that are going both north and south as well as visitor traffic. Now, a really interesting, and again, part of the flexibility, that would likely emerge as a regional project, but the city could say, we would also like to use some of our local money to supplement that project. And that would be a really good example of one where that could happen. Likewise, we see things like, Bob Jones Trail or other areas where we have a city that a trail may start in one city and wind up someplace else. There's all kinds of flexibility to make sure that you would be able to work collaboratively to move those types of projects forward.
I guess what I'm looking at is that it's a smaller amount, but I think it's more traffic. So I'm not sure how they came up with perhaps the mayor who sits on the board of SLOCOG can tell us how that computes.
Again, it's based on population of the region. That's the number. It's the population, and that was actually one of those things by consensus. I don't know who asked it, but I know someone did. There's a question about how does everybody figure this out? And there are different answers for different councils of governments. Some go road miles, some go population, some go sales tax, some do all kinds of combinations of 20% of this, 15% of that. One of the things we wanted to make sure of based on public input is to make it simple, make it enforceable, and make it be something that we can easily keep up with, right? And so over the last, several months, we met with the city managers, we met with county staff, and this is kind of what the consensus came up with that everyone felt was the fairest approach. And so we did look at other opportunities out there. At this point, this is what's being proposed, but if you have other comments or direction that you'd like the board to consider, we can certainly bring that back.
No, I don't really have any basis for changing it. I just noticed it's a little bit less. And I think we have more traffic, like I said. I'm not so, thanks for answering the best you could.
Okay.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. Yes, our city itself does almost triple in size throughout the normal workday, which is challenging, and I hear what you're saying. And the agreed upon decision was on population. Thank you. Councilmember Shoresman.
Thanks. Yeah, my questions are kind of along those lines, and I asked a lot of the questions in advance, so thank you for covering some of them. Can you give some examples, some specific examples of what a regional project what some regional projects that we know are already in existence that might be good candidates for the regional share of the funds?
So SLOCOG commissioned 2 studies that were the last 8 years. One was the US 101 North Improvement Project, and one was US 101 South. On the US 101 South, we were looking at potentially auxiliary lanes going on and off the freeway to make it easier for those of us that have the joy of that quick get on 101, there are definitely some places that could be improved. That would be a project. In North County, the bypass, the 46-101 connection, that's one that would be possible. In some of the other areas, we do have some coastal trails that have been populated. People were interested in seeing some of those. The others that to Councilmember Marx's point, there are some intersections, or I'm going to say connector roads that are larger, that are not a Caltrans facility, that potentially LOVR, those kinds of things that have multiple impacts across communities would also be looked at as regional projects. And really looking at what we call the tier 1, which are the ones that rise to the top of the regional transportation plan, which is updated every 4 years. There are priority projects that have been laid out on those. I think most people think about, again, traffic enhancements and mitigations, specifically in South County, when you were coming down southbound and all of a sudden you hit Pismo, and it starts to get a really, in that area, there's a lot of real congestion issues down there. Just really, every area has their own unique thing. In the North Coast, there's questions there about Highway 1 and what improvements might be made there. There's currently another study that's about to kick off on Highway 1 North improvement. So all of those potentially are regional projects. I do want to note, though, that if there was a desire to increase regional transit services, let's say between Paso and San Luis Obispo, that there's room in there if you choose to have regional projects also considered in transit as well.
That seems like it would be a hard one, though, because this is technically one-time funding each year, and that would require ongoing investment.
It's more like you'd have to buy the bus for it. And,
Okay.
So there's different ways of doing it, but we were, again, just trying to make it as flexible. It's the same kind of thing with, intelligent transportation systems, signal timing, those kind of improvements.
Right.
One thing we're seeing a lot of other counties explore right now is use of measure funds for resiliency planning, like evacuation planning, climate change, sea level rise, all those kind of things that can potentially affect the transportation network. Those all fall under the same category. Same with safe routes to schools too.
So back to the regional projects, some of the ones you mentioned, auxiliary lanes on Highway 101. Someone brought up the Prado Road interchange. This is like $4 million, almost $3 million if we're looking at the Central County portion. Just the Prado Road interchange in itself is estimated to cost $145, $150 million. This is not going to get us even close to where we need to be for some of these large projects. So is it really realistic that we could leverage enough funds to?
I'll give you a great example. So in San Luis Obispo County, they took $44,000 of their Measure L money and wound up with $180 million. So it is possible, and I'm not saying it's guaranteed. I'm not saying it's guaranteed for any one thing there, right? But what this money is best suited for is making projects shovel ready. So it's basically, you may have some right-of-way acquisition, you may have environmental documents that you need to move forward on. You may have just the basic planning side of it, the studies, the things that are required to get things going with Caltrans. The other thing is that, even with Caltrans right now, as I'm sure you may or may not be aware, they are not in the business of capacity building anymore with additional lanes. So everything right now is shifting for them to be on managed lanes. So studies that relate to that or can justify that. And managed lanes can also be used for bus rapid transit. There are a lot of different ways you can get around it, so to speak. But yeah, make no mistake, even with this amount of money, which again is not a small amount of money, but any one of these major projects are multi-million dollar, like tens of hundreds of millions of dollar projects. They're not small.
And I'm going to pass it to Mr. Worthley because we had a lot of this conversation during the workshop on the 13th, including the projects you were asking about.
Yeah, a couple of additions. Kendall mentioned Santa Cruz County putting in $30 million from their measure and leveraging over $115 million from the state, one cycle, one project. So that's possible. But you asked the question, Councilman Member Shoresman, what's regional? In the Central County area, SLOCOG has funded regional projects like the Los Osos Valley Road Interchange Project, the Railroad Safety Trail Project, the train station improvements. All these are different multimodal things. They're regional in nature. We've seen them as regional and necessary for us to fund also. We would continue doing these projects in collaboration with the city. It's not us saying, this is what we think you need to do. It's working with your staff, identifying what the most important thing is, in this case, in the central region. And I guess the unincorporated county staff would say, here's what we think is in the unincorporated region most important to them, and figure out what the best project is through the SLOCOG board to decide.
Right. I understand that this is like a different pot of money even than some of the grant making and project support that SLOCOG has done already in the past, and that those opportunities might still be there, or even to leverage with some of these funds. I was just trying to get to the point where I could understand how much money is needed, and that this is, and for some big projects, a relatively small amount of money, even though 35 million is a lot more money than we've got today. So recognizing that.
Have this in the presentation, and note to self, we probably should have. So in the regional transportation plan, when we project out over 30 years, right, there's currently a $2.1 or $2.2 billion deficit or shortfall, right? So this measure with everything that's currently programmed in the regional transportation plan almost gets us halfway to filling that gap in that same timeframe. And that is substantial. That is a lot of money. That's without the leveraging. That's just the money that would come in from the tax measure over that time. So when you think about the leveraging, it kind of almost gets us there to break even. But I want to be really clear about that, because it's not like this measure passes and tomorrow everybody's roads are up to a pavement condition of 100 and everything gets built and there's unicorns and happiness and joy everywhere we go. It just doesn't work that way. But this is actually sort of it's almost a Band-Aid, if you will, in order to sort of keep us from losing any more ground in pavement condition and the ability to maintain and enhance a local transportation infrastructure that will allow us to continue to thrive economically as well as quality of life. The other thing that I think is real important, 25% of this money that comes in is potentially paid by visitors that come to this area for the wine, for the beach, just to get away. And that's our friends, neighbors, and people that are supporting our businesses. So this is one of the few kinds of taxes that does that. And it's appropriate because they're on the roads doing that at this time. They are using that. So just another.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I mean, that's one of the things that we benefit in having a healthy tourism industry here, is that a lot of our sales tax is paid by people who are coming here and visiting, which is wonderful. I just have two more questions. I'll try to keep them quick. So related to the regional share again, does SLOCOG, the way the plan is written, have the flexibility to use funds if there's a multi-jurisdictional or multi-regional project, to use funds from the different pots, or in order to make that one big project happen that, or?
Yes, so
okay.
hypothetically, let's say that the city of San Luis Obispo and the city of, I'm trying to think who's closest, Paso, right, that they want, well, that's going to be a long bike ride. I don't think anybody wants to.
Pismo.
Let's go Pismo. That you guys wanted to do a trail or something together, all right? Or you had something that you want to do, a park and ride lot, some type of something. You could do that. And you could do it with your local funds and potentially tap into regional. So you could actually use multiple things to make it work. Another thing to keep in mind is, let's say that there is that the city of San Luis Obispo, for whatever reason, needed more money in the first 2 years, and Pismo's not really ready to go yet with some of their stuff. You can do interagency loans between agencies, between cities, through an MOU, provided that everybody's on board with that. You still have to account for the money. You still have to have the same, at the end of the day, the same percentages that are going to everyone. But there is the flexibility to make those kinds of things work. And I think that's one thing that we really tried to in the language, is to encourage collaboration as opposed to isolation, right? So that's why we don't have one size fits all for bike and pedestrian trails, because again, different places, different needs. People in Los Osos are not necessarily thrilled about the idea of sidewalks, curbs, and gutters. They really don't want them, but they do want safe routes to schools, right? So we have to make it flexible enough that people can get what they want in their own communities.
Thanks. Last question, the map. Can you talk to me about how this map came to be?
I'm going to let James take that one because he drew it with his own hands.
Nope. Didn't draw it. This map actually goes back decades that SLOCOG has used for subregions just like this. It predates me. I go back to 1996, and it was designed before GIS was available at SLOCOG. So it was sketched out. Now it's a little more definitive with GIS because we can follow the boundaries a little bit better. It does follow kind of natural boundaries in terms of ridge lines. I'll say watersheds loosely, but okay. There's 4 subregions here. SLOCOG sometimes talks about a 5th subregion because we have a non-attainment area in San Luis Obispo County on the very far east side. It's east of Creston, it's east of Shandon, but we draw a line over there that isn't shown on this map because we have to do analysis for that area in order to spend funds in our region everywhere. It also gives us a bonus of congestion mitigation air quality funds from the federal government. It's not our fault that the air quality is bad out there. It's all drift in from LA, San Joaquin Valley, and Bay Area. Our total population out there is somewhere in the neighborhood of 800 people to 1,000 people, over 40% of our land area. But going back to the map, why is it this way? This is how it was designed. I guess I inherited it, and we've kept it. They're good analysis units, we feel, for like-minded communities. I've always struggled with Avila Beach. Do they really fit better with San Luis Obispo, or do they fit better with Pismo Beach? Because these lines were drawn way back when, we've kept it with San Luis Obispo. Pismo Beach, Arroyo Grande, the 5 cities area, and then south, we've kept that. And then the North Coast, anybody that can see the ocean from their town is considered North Coast, all the way up. Very top of the peaks of San Luis Obispo can see the coast, but not most drivers at the top of the peaks with their vehicles anyway can see the coast. Does that make enough sense?
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Francis.
Yeah, thank you very much. I don't know if the Band-Aid analogy is the sexiest sales pitch, but I guess it kind of works to get at what we're trying to fill the gap here. One of the questions that I keep kind of coming back to, you talked a lot about how this is kind of we're approaching this in a new way of allocating the funds to kind of address some fairness issues. And then that is why the use of the supervisorial districts is coming in so that each of the different unincorporated regions then has more control. But I have a question about whether or not then that potentially just sort of isolates the pots of funds and makes it a little bit more challenging to tackle the bigger projects, essentially just dilutes the power of the funds by putting them into the separate pots. I don't know if I articulated that well, but.
You did, and we've actually talked about that with county staff. Just to be clear, that is not the major regional money. That's just for the local road maintenance, like for local road funds, safe routes to schools, that sort of thing. And the reason for it is that consistently people that are living in the communities in unincorporated areas were not as confident in in knowing that they were going to actually get money for projects in their area. And they did, this county board of supervisors has talked about that. And then one of the things was basically like, well, what if we just had it all in one pot and you trust us and we're going to do it? And I absolutely don't mean this the way it's going to sound, but they don't trust them to do it. That's why. Yeah. So they wanted to make sure that there was going to be a trail of money that they could say, all right, I know that District 1 is going to get so much of this money for the unincorporated areas, not for the cities, but for the unincorporated areas, so that they can get what they need to get repaired in the areas. And that's what really important to places in like Los Osos and Baywood Park, and certainly Oceano and other places, right? So that's why it was done that way. It was really about transparency and fairness, and really came out of the discussions for the supervisors, who all seemed to feel that that was the best way to do it as well.
And can I just add to that? So not just the supervisors were fine with it, but it was from the people that were contacted. They were giving their input of, at least I know I can go knock on the door or send an email or pick up the phone to one person, where when it just came to the SLOCOG board, they felt it was too nebulous. So this way that transparency and accountability was more clear for the people they were surveying.
Thank you. And this is something we talked a little bit about in our briefing, but just for folks who might be listening, once this passes, is there any flexibility for kind of readjusting how the funds are allocated, or is that set in stone?
So it's not adjustable by the type, like 55% for local, 40% for regional. But as I mentioned, every 10 years, we have an opportunity to look and see, do we need to refine definitions within those categories? Are there new things that have come to pass? As an example, Waymo is very popular in some cities. I'm terrified of it myself, but what if that comes into being and we have some sort of technology that's not currently addressed in the plan but fits in? So we could do that. If you were going to change anything from a percentage standpoint, like let's say you were going to say right now it's 55%, but what if you said we want that 75%? That would have to go back out to the voters for them to approve it. So this does lock in those numbers for the 30-year period, but it does allow for flexibility within the various categories to make adjustments based on new things that people want to prioritize. That can also include new projects. So just as we see the regional transportation plan being updated every 4 years, right? There may be new things that come into play that we don't know about now, or there may be new funding opportunities that the federal government or the state government prioritizes that are not priorities now that, position us in order to take advantage of those opportunities.
So that comprehensive program review only really could allow different project types, but it wouldn't necessarily change how the map is drawn or any of the allocations even within the 5540 are done.
Correct. Once the measure is passed by ordinance and by the plan, it's basically a contract between SLOCOG acting as the transportation authority and the voters. And so it has to stay the same for that reason.
And can you remind us what percentage of voters would need to vote on that in order to change it?
2/3.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Boswell.
Thank you. Let's see. Maybe following up on that, in 2030, we have the next census. Will changed population numbers result in a change in distribution?
Correct. So the population, right now, the snapshot is based on the 2020 census, but yes, the census was updated every 10 years, so the population would be updated as well. I think it's important to note, again, not saying it's going to happen, but if Oceano, for example, decided to incorporate and become a city, then all of these numbers would change accordingly to adjust to the population of Oceano and how that affects both the county and everyone else. But the fundamental way that it works would remain the same.
Okay, and that kind of, the example you gave in the population, these would essentially happen kind of automatically, or do they have to go through that 10-year review?
They would happen automatically, so that basically as part of the process, we would be looking at those numbers and seeing how they adjust over time. Other things that can cause adjustments, if any of the cities, for example, were to implement a sphere of influence that changes their population, that would trigger a readjustment. So if Paso Robles, for example, went out and annexed another 200, 300 acres, and that brings their population up by 10,000. That would be adjusted at that point for all of these numbers as well.
Okay. Can you put the schedule? I think you had a schedule slide.
Oops, sorry.
Back. So I thought I saw something about you anticipate coming back to us again?
Yes. So if well, I'm going to think really positively now. At the next SLOCOG board meeting, which would be the first week of February, if they approve of the ordinance and the plan, and that means that they have adopted it, then what will happen is each city and the county will have another presentation and opportunity to also formally approve by resolution the plan itself. And then we need the cities and the county to approve of that plan before it can come back to the SLOCOG board for the final action, which is the April board meeting, when they would request that the measure be placed on the ballot by the Board of Supervisors. So the Board of Supervisors actually has the final action, which is putting it on the ballot, but the request comes from the SLOCOG board acting as the transportation authority.
Okay. Yeah, that was what I was wondering. If it's a form, we don't have to take action tonight, but the next one would be a formal action through resolution. Does that require all 7 cities to approve?
As long as we have majority approval by population, then it moves forward. And I can tell you, we anticipate, obviously we don't know until we get there, but at this point, it seems that the cities are on board with this to move it forward, at least to the ballot.
Great.
And March 3rd is the date that it's tentatively coming back to us.
March 3rd. Okay, great. Okay, that's all I have for questions. I have a few more comments later.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Francis.
Sorry, just one more. Where do we account for the population of Cal Poly, or how do we account for that?
Really good question, because it did come up a couple of times. And in fact, we were asking, should we could put that in with the city of San Luis Obispo? Should be. It's not. So that particular population is considered part of county.
So it goes into the county pot at this point, and that was what everybody agreed to, so.
Can I hear a little bit more about kind of the reasoning behind that? Because to me, that feels like it's more of a technicality and then just shortchanges us the funding that we need in order to maintain the roads that they're using.
I'm trying to figure out how to answer that, because we have had that discussion, and maybe, James, you've got a better.
Long discussions
Yeah, I
with city managers, multiple discussions in 2025, and the population of Cal Poly, the dorm beds, really, it's just the dorm beds that are on campus, land in District 5 and the unincorporated areas. And it was not adjusted to be in the city of SLO because it's not in the city of SLO.
Even though they're shopping.
Even though everything they do,
and-
well, their lives, if you live in the dorms, 90% of your life is on campus. You go to class, you eat there, you sleep there, you entertain somewhat there, and then you entertain in downtown and you go to your doctor's appointments and whatnot. But if you live there, your life is primarily there, but not entirely. You're right.
Yeah, and then a good portion of their population isn't obviously living in the dorms. And then they're counted in our
But
census.
they're counted within a city that live in the city, correct?
Okay.
They are counted in your regional pot, though. They are counted in the region.
Yeah. I'm going to chew on that one for a few more minutes.
And in the
Thank you.
unincorporated pot, they would be counted in the District 5. So you'd be hitting up your supervisor of District 5 to say, hey, maybe Cal Poly needs to extend the railroad safety trail north toward Morro Bay.
Okay, thank you.
Again, going back to every group should be able to go back to their supervisor that is responsible for them to be able to have accountability and transparency. Councilmember Shorsman.
Sorry, just follow up to that, because, so Cal Poly is in for the 55%, Cal Poly is in the unincorporated share, but it's in the regional, central region?
Yes, so when we look at the central region, so looking here on this map, right? San Luis Obispo, everything in that central region, which is the city of San Luis Obispo, the unincorporated area of Avila Beach, that also includes everything at Cal Poly. So that entire population of that area is considered part of the regional.
So the Cal Poly residents, people that live on the campus at Cal Poly, are treated differently in the two
Yes.
parts of the formula.
Well, I would say that the
That's
formula is different, right? Because the first part of the formula is specific to local streets and roads, and the second part of the formula is really for regional projects. And within the regional projects, there are different pots of money. So, as an example, in a regional project, you might have improvements for roads that go from Cal Poly into San Luis Obispo or into other areas. That might be a regional project in the making, right? But that whole region benefits. Avila Beach, as an example, just got a roundabout down there and some other improvements. Depending on where those projects are and what other regions are affected by them, or people going in and out, those may be also considered regional projects.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much for this really good of presentation and answering the many questions. Mr. Worthley, if you could, at a future date, share that jobs handout that came at the workshop to the council. I think that might help answer some of those questions. It was gloriously called grants projects or something of that sort that Rich was in charge of when going around. I think that would be a little bit more helpful too, to help picture what those different regional projects could be.
Is finalizing that document right now, and we're trying to get up on the website end of the week.
Okay, cool. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. All right, with that, before I go to public comment, Councilmember Marks.
I'm just curious if parking actually is considered part of transportation.
It can be. So if you have a park and ride lot, because again, these are all things that, are going to be part of the, like you can have a transit center, you can have lots in general. It's anything that involves connecting people into a community. So you
What
should be
about
able.
parking structures?
Wayfinding is allowed. I'd have to go back and double check and see if a structure is allowed. I believe it would be, but I need to double check that to make sure.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. With that, do we have any public comment?
Yes, we have one speaker card from Rachel Whalen.
Good evening, it's me again, Rachel Whalen with the SLO Chamber. I'm here to encourage the city to support SLOCOG's draft expenditure plan for the proposed self-help sales tax measure to fund transportation infrastructure. This measure presents a significant opportunity for our community to leverage local dollars to unlock a much larger amount of state and federal transportation funding. Many competitive grants require a reliable local match, and without one, projects are often delayed or never move forward. To put the scale of this opportunity into perspective, if Measure J had passed in 2016, San Luis Obispo County is estimated to have received roughly $700 million in transportation funding since then. This is an extraordinary amount of investment that we've missed, and that same level of funding would become available if this measure passes. These funds would deliver direct and tangible benefits to our community. They would support improved street maintenance, safer travel for students, seniors, and all road users, expanded options for pedestrians and cyclists, and stronger regional connectivity. Reliable transportation infrastructure is foundational to economic vitality, workforce mobility, and quality of life for residents, businesses, and visitors. Our neighboring counties already have self-help sales tax measures in place and have been collecting these funds for years, allowing them to advance major projects and successfully compete for additional outside funding. Passing this measure would finally position SLO County to compete on equal footing. It's also important to note that essential purchases like groceries, healthcare, and housing are exempt. And similar to the city's local revenue measure, this tax allows non-residents to help support the transportation system they use. As a major tourist destination, that shared responsibility is critical. Finally, the draft expenditure plan preserves local control, giving municipalities the flexibility to invest their share of funds in projects that best meet local priorities, with strong accountability measures to ensure funds are used as promised. For these reasons, we urge the City of San Luis Obispo to support SLOCOG's draft expenditure plan and help bring meaningful transportation investment back to our community. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you. Any other commenters?
No, they're not.
Thank you. Well, with that, this is a report that we receive, not a motion, but this is definitely our chance to have some feedback to give back to SLOCOG and team. Councilmember Boswell.
Thanks. Yeah, our direction recommendations, receiving comments. So just a couple of comments. When I appreciate the Chamber's comments, particularly about the leveraging. I mean, to me, this is perhaps one of the biggest issues here is that we have put ourselves at a competitive disadvantage with not only our surrounding counties, but I think it's 90% of the state population is covered under self-help. Competition for transportation dollars is fierce. I suspect it's going to get tougher. And we've just really put ourselves at a disadvantage for leveraging those state and federal transportation dollars, which are our dollars, right? I mean, those dollars are funded by our taxes. So I think that's just such a key point here, even beyond how much it's just going to raise for us, is that putting us in a much more advantageous position for competing for that state and federal funding. The second is, I mean, we've heard a lot of discussion about this. And I asked a lot of questions in the briefing on this about, using population as a primary determinant for the amount. I mean, I think it does. I think we have, a relatively, as the regional job center and with Cal Poly, we have a we carry a disproportionate share of the transportation impacts in this region that aren't effectively reflected by population numbers. I would probably at the end of the day prefer to see another metric. However, I also understand the real need for simplicity here. This is a big ask for the voters in the community, both in terms of the complexity of the measure we're asking them to vote on, but also, asking them to vote a sales tax onto themselves. And so I think we also have a responsibility to put forward as straightforward and as simple to understand measure as we possibly can, given the complexity. So I recognize that that's what we're trying to balance here. So I appreciate that. SLOCOG, I know I spent an incredible amount of time trying to figure out how to balance the regional fairness issue with the clarity for the voters issue. So that's my comments. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Councilmember Shorsman.
Thank you, Councilmember Boswell, for kicking it off. I want to thank the team for spending time with each of us to kind of brief us on this in advance. Really always appreciate having the opportunity to ask questions in advance, and also for all the work that you've put into this. It's not an easy job to try and figure out something complex like this and make it simple enough for voters and people with a variety of different opinions on these topics to get everybody on the same page. But I agree with Councilmember Boswell that we're leaving a lot of money on the table by not having being a self-help county. So overall, I think this is probably, something that's been a long time coming and something that we need. I do have some feedback for what it's worth from one council member, and I wanted to touch on the formula a little bit. While I understand the use of population to make some of these to make the two categories, and it does seem like we've built population into the formula twice. In two slightly different ways. And I'm curious, I didn't get a chance to do a bunch of research on some of the other self-help counties, but I'm curious how they've balanced the different ways of creating the formula to try and create fairness while simplicity at the same time. And it seems like we've used population 2 times. I don't have a better idea, honestly, of how to do it. So I can't really comment on that specifically. Like I said, I wish I had had more time to look into it, but that would be my comment on the formula. I wish it was taking into account something like vehicle miles traveled or roadway miles or something like that. Also, I guess this is just a bit of feedback for the rest of the process as you go forward with trying to get the word out and explain this to people. I really do think it would be good to be able to talk about some specific examples, even if they're not, we're going to fund this, but these are the types of projects that will be funded. I think that would help create clarity for residents in different parts of the county so that they can see how this might come back to them. Whether it's the project on 101 that you mentioned or the Prado interchange, or maybe there's, an example of a project up in North County that you can use as an example. I think that might just create a better visual picture for people. Last but not least, and this is probably the one that I have struggled with the most, is the map. I respectfully disagree with Morro Bay and Los Osos being more like the North Coast than they are like San Luis Obispo. I can appreciate that for SLOCOG's purposes, this map has been in existence for a long time, but over the years and in a variety of other ways, SLO is connected to Morro Bay and Los Osos, and I think by roadways is not the least of the examples. It's really hard. There's only 2 ways in and out of Los Osos. One goes to Morro Bay and one goes to San Luis Obispo. So I think we're intricately connected to that area by that in itself. Also, we share a school district with Morro Bay. We share a seat on the 3CE board. And Osos, yes, share a school district with both those areas. We share a 3 CE seat with Morro Bay. In terms of homeless services providers, CAPSLO is the main service provider for San Luis Obispo, and it's also the main service provider for that part of the coast. We share a supervisor district with Morro Bay. So I think there are lots of connections between us and Morro Bay, and that would change. It wouldn't. It wouldn't change the order, I don't think. I don't know the population of Los Osos, but it would increase the population share of the central region if Morro Bay and Los Osos were included, and it would shake up that proportion a little bit. So realize that's a stretch to ask for at this stage, but this is a feedback session, so if I can give feedback, that would be my feedback.
Thank you. Councilmember Marks.
Thank you. Yeah, basically, I really support this as I did in 2015, 2016. I was very disappointed when we lost by such a, you said 400 votes, but I think it was, what, like 1% or something, or 2? Yeah, it was so close to being 2/3 that it just, it stabbed me to the heart, I have to say. I think I was the chair of SLOCOG at that time. So I just wanted to say that I really like the fact that there's a chance for inter-entity exchange and kind of layering of these different kinds of things. And I'll give you an example, like with Cal Poly and the city. You know, people from time to time talk about having a roundabout at the corner of Grand and Slack. I don't even know if that's a real project, but people have talked about it. So I think that it's important with District 2, North Coast, District 5, which includes Atascadero, and then District 3. So about 65% of the constituents in District 3 live in the city, and about, I think, 20% of District 2 live in the city, and then District 5, it's making up the difference, maybe 15%, something like that. Everything north of Monterey Street is in District 5, and I lived in District 5 for many years, right next to Cal Poly. At any rate, the funds that are part of the unincorporated area but are divided by supervisorial districts, I think it's also important to recognize the fact that District 2, 3, and 5 also represent the city of San Luis Obispo. Other cities are entirely contained within a district like Atascadero, you know. So when it comes to regional allocation of regional monies that are considered unincorporated, so Los Osos is unincorporated, though there are 20 CSDs. They're essentially urban in the county. At any rate, I think that needs to be taken into account when we're talking about these interagency exchange and layering different kinds of projects where there's a nexus that has to do with vehicle miles traveled. You know, basically origin and destination studies. You guys, I know SLOCOG's got all this information. So, you know, if people who live in Los Osos are driving to San Luis Obispo to go to work, or, you know, and then talk about Cal Poly, it's not just the people who happen to live in the dorms. It's the staff, it's the faculty, again, origin, destination. And then beyond that, events. Every year, move in, right? Graduation, parents' weekend, Poly, open house. there's so many different events that draw people from the whole state. And they're driving, they're coming here with cars and like that. So I don't know how exactly this could be taken into account, but the wear and tear on our roads and infrastructure is significant. And I don't know if there's perhaps some way of encouraging creative use of without changing the formula as presented, if there'd be some way of encouraging the inter-entity exchange and layering of projects so that if somehow you could bring that out in the outreach. I also hope that you do some kind of analysis, or you may have already done it, of where those missing 401 votes lived. Where did they live? And do like extensive outreach there. Not that it's the same people. A lot of new people have moved to the area. But if you can really figure out, okay, here's where we lost. We lost in Cayucas or whatever. That would really help design your outreach. That's going to be crucial to the success of this measure. And I certainly wish you will. So that's it. Yeah.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Francis.
Thank you so much. I'll just start by saying thanks again. The presentation was really lovely and impactful. And I'll start by saying that I am very much in favor of this. It's truly shocking to see how much money our county has left on the table over the last years and without having a self-help measure, and very much eager to see this succeed. But I think I will also echo my colleagues' concerns about some of the issues with the map itself and how funds are being allocated. Quick back of the envelope calculation, and it looks like 27.5% of District 5's population is on Cal Poly's campus. And I know we're talking about that being a population that doesn't go very far, maybe mostly on campus, but when they do go somewhere, they're going somewhere within the city. And I'm just worried that once this passes, as we've said, we're stuck with the calculation as approved by the voters. And I know we want to keep this simple and clear and use the maps that have been used for the last however many decades, but it really feels like it misses a big part of how people are actually using the roads, the fact that our city doubles in size every day with people coming in to work and to play. And I know we're a little late in the game to be making changes here, but since it's a feedback session, I will offer my feedback. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Boswell.
Thank you. I want to follow on a comment Vice Mayor Francis made. So the unincorporated portion in the 55%, Cal Poly is going to generate that for District 5. So that money, could that money be spent by Cal Poly, their state agency?
Interesting. I don't know if I can answer that or not.
Right, so they're weird, right? It's an unincorporated area, but not really, not in the way we generally think of unincorporated area because it's state. Could they ask that some portion of those funds be allocated to either the city or regional transit system to the extent that they serve onto campus?
In Monterey County, which passed Measure X, Cal State Monterey Bay does get Measure X funds. So they've used that to connect the campus to local cities.
And they're using it for transit? Mm-hmm. Great, thank you.
And did they already have a contract with the city for their bus transit that like Cal Poly does?
Monterey Salinas Transit is the provider there.
Right, but did CSU Monterey Bay already have a contract with the city?
I do not know.
Okay, so I think there's so many factors we can't really even begin to discuss because we don't necessarily know those. I just want to go back to the regional conversation. on the SLOCOG board, one of the conversations we've had a lot is the thinking regionally and then the numbers in the 40% and getting separated out and people really feeling like this is mine and we're accountable was a definite concern. And that South County versus Central versus North was truly, from what I understood, the best way that people in the community would feel there was accountability. And so for us to see a measure pass where all people, or many people, as many people as possible could get to that 65%, we had to really look at what we could do to make this regional. And I will say that in the ability to borrow, in a sense, money from North County to a South County project, South County, North County project, et cetera, was where we would take those every 4 years and think strategically, have the vision, and think about what does regional look like, what do those big projects look like, and that was the conversation that we were having at the SLOCOG board. So I also want us to remember, as a council, we have the ability to advocate to the SLOCOG board as a whole, to say, make sure you're thinking regionally as this, if this passes. We have done this already with monies that a grant was expiring from another area much north of our county, and we were able to kind of trade. We knew we had a project right now we needed to get done, and we could take their money, get the project done, and we promised that later on, when their project is more ready, we will give some of our money back to them. So we're allowed to borrow like this, and so just kind of want to remind people that this is still possible. The thinking regional as possible, but the importance of accountability and transparency to every community member in our entire county to pass this ballot measure is also very important. So I'll just leave it at that. Councilmember Shoresman.
Thanks for bringing that up, Mayor, because that's why I was asking about the regional shares and the flexibility initially, because I don't want to hamstring us. Yeah, so it's important. Just back to the follow-up on the Cal Poly's portion of, or where Cal Poly sits in the unincorporated. Do I remember correctly, and I think I saw it in the revisions to the plan, that it's been sort of agreed upon by the districts that they want to take that unincorporated share of the 55% that looks like it's about $8 million for the unincorporated parts of the county, and they want to divide that equally by districts so that each district kind of has its portion instead of, so in order to do what was being hypothesized, the 5th district would kind of have to give up part of their share for Cal Poly to put some of that money towards transit in the, okay, just wanted to make sure I was understanding that.
Well, thank you. I don't see any more lights on, so I just, I want to echo that list of projects. This is what we shared in the workshop too, is we need to make the ballot measure as clear as possible to the community to see kind of what they're getting, in a sense, for the money that they're willing to vote for, and also remind people, as you did, this is not all their dollars. This is tourism dollars, people who come and visit, as much similar to what our sales tax was or is, which is, we really get more bang for our buck with this ballot measure, and I really hope that people can understand per half cent, but also with the leveraging ability, that the money we have lost, as you have shared already in this presentation, for infrastructure projects is huge. And yes, there's no guarantee, but we see it time and time again in all different counties throughout California. And I will say, as I have sat through meetings, statewide meetings, state legislators and federal legislators tell us, if you were a self-help, but you're not, and so we're not inclined to give you money compared to other counties in our state. So that alone makes me want to bring this forward and hope that people want to vote for this tax measure. And at the same time, if they don't, I also want to bring this forward. I want to give the community the ability to have the chance to put their voice through this. So that's all I have to say on this. All about voting and letting people vote and sharing their vote. This is what we're talking about in these last couple weeks. So we'll keep talking about it, don't you worry, as our communications plan shared earlier today about a different topic, but similar. So thank you very much for sharing all of this. I know it was a lot and it's late, but thank you. Oh, you're welcome. So that brings us to our final point, the liaison reports and communications. And while last time's was much longer because we had multiple weeks of no meeting, this time we've only had 1 week. So nice and quick, I will say that we do have the Visit SLO County Advisory Committee meeting at 8:30 tomorrow morning, so I'll be there and tell you more about that on February 3rd, along with City Manager. Also, last week I had the pleasure of being on the KCPR, Cal Poly Radio. Oddly enough, well, I should say first and foremost, we talked about slow life and what that looks like, to call this place Sloam. But at the same time, we talked about street signs of all things. The students want to know why the street signs look as they do and have the font as they do. And I encouraged them to talk to the professor, Brian Lawler, who is on campus still to this day. And of course, to come and talk to our beautiful public works people and talk about the history of that just a little bit more. Obviously, we also have that on our website. We had our mayor's meeting on Friday, and we talked a lot about the bills, similar to we had our conversation today, and local roads a little bit. We also talked about the Bird Festival in Morro Bay, so that was fun. But I will say that we talked about ICE, and it was an interesting conversation. And I will say that there were 2 themes that came up from pretty much everyone. Was there is fear in our community, and we want to decrease some of that fear by giving them education of what we do in all of our different communities. And I think luckily we got to do that a little bit today with Deputy Chief Amoroso and our city attorney and city manager. Is, of course, we will uphold the laws we need to uphold, and our police officers will not be assisting ICE in any way. So just remembering to please call our 805-781-7312, our non-emergency line. If you see something, please say something. I know I say that quaint statement a lot, but it really means something. And then also yesterday, I got to have the honor of speaking in Paso for the Martin Luther King Jr. Celebration, and the students from the choir got to sing, and it was a really great event. And lastly, I'm just going to take a little moment on Saturday. I started something with a local personal trainer in the community, Mike Robinson, is celebrating his 16th anniversary of MZR Fitness. And we've been talking all the last year of how do we get our community out and moving just a little bit more. And so many times people tell me, well, I can't afford it, I can't afford it, I can't afford it. We have beautiful places to go hike in SLO and all of that, but sometimes that's a little intimidating. So we have a free all ages workout, and just want to encourage people to get out and move. So if you have any questions, check out my social media. Also on Saturday, we'll be going to the Mautani, which is the Arab American Community Oral History and Installation at Cal Poly Library. With that, Councilmember Marks.
Thank you. Well, I attended my last IWMA meeting on the 14th of January, and everybody, it was interesting. They all said, "What, you're still here?" Oh, yeah, hi. Anyway, I explained. So we did the personnel review of Kobe Sky after, this is his first 6 months, and also approved his participation in the South County Leadership, which I think is really a good idea. He needs to meet people and make friends being new. And so February 11th, it'll be Michelle Shoresman on the board with Mike Boswell as the alternate. And I encourage you guys to reach out to the IWMA and get as much onboarding as you can before the 11th. So what else we did in that meeting was finalize the sale of the real property across the street. It's sold for $780,000, which is the listing price. And that money will be applied to backfill the reserves that were utilized to purchase the building at 555 Choro, which was a little bit more, but anyway, it makes the reserve whole again. We also all attended the chamber banquet, I think. Almost all. No, three of us. Three of us attended the chamber banquet, and it was wonderful that Jerry LaChance got the Citizen of the Year. She's really great. And also today was the first day that the Center for Dispute Resolutions in San Luis Obispo College of Law received their first cash donation. And I wanted to let you know that that effort is continuing, and the first priority is going to be to reinstate Slow Solutions, the contract that was previously held by Creative Mediation to assist with community dispute resolution services. But they need to raise a certain amount of money before they can fund doing that. And so during our budget discussions, I'm going to bring up the possibility that the city could make a donation toward this effort earlier than possibly contemplated in the past, so that we can get the services going, so that they're there when Cal Poly probably starts in the fall. We really need it. And also Cuesta and Cal Poly need to pitch in. So that's what we're going to try to do, is first things first, get Slow Solutions up and running so that the community has the benefit of mediation and dispute resolution services. We really need it, and we're suffering without it. So that's coming up. Thank you.
Nice, thank you. Council Member Shorsman.
Yes, as well, for sitting in last week at the Downtown Slow Board retreat. I was out Tuesday night, and so appreciate that he pinched hit for that retreat as well. On Thursday, I attended the Active Transportation Committee meeting where the ATC looked at our paving plan for this next go round, and they gave the meeting went from 6 p.m. till 9:30, and I think they gave some really thoughtful feedback. I still couldn't stay for the whole thing, so I have to go back and watch the last hour. But as always, thanks to the Active Transportation Committee for putting in so much time and effort and care and thought into our paving plan so we can get the most out of those dollars. We did some interviews for our Human Relations Commission last week. The mayor and we have an unscheduled vacancy that hopefully we got a good candidate that will be coming forward to the whole council very soon here. And then as the chair of the Homeless Services Oversight Council, I participated in an interview last week with KPMG, which is a consulting firm that the county has hired to do some assessment of the services provided by the Department of Social Services. They've been working their way through county departments, and DSS is next. So they were doing stakeholder interviews. So I participated in that. And tomorrow I have a Homeless Services Oversight Council meeting at 1 p.m. in room 101 at the Department of Social Services, in case anybody is interested in attending. Oh, and one last thing, attended the chamber dinner, as Councilmember Marks said, but before the chamber dinner, attended a memorial service for a gentleman named Jim Conway. Actually, Councilmember Marks was there as well, who has been a longstanding resident of the county and has donated generously to a variety of causes and was a frequent sponsor of many performances at the Performing Arts Center in particular. So big supporter, yes, and former faculty emeritus at Cal Poly, so big supporter of lots of things in the county, and his presence will be missed.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Francis.
Yeah, thank you very much. You forgot to mention that you also attended the point in time count training on Thursday. So we were there together getting ready for doing the county's point in time count this coming Tuesday, right? 1 week from tonight. And that same day, we had the SCLC, the Student Community Liaison Committee, where we heard about the quarter to semester city impacts from Cal Poly, and also received the annual noise report from Christine Wallace. Great to see that those numbers continue to trend down, at least our complaints, and so that's a really good sign. That same night, I had my last CAPSLO meeting. I'll be handing the baton to Councilmember Boswell. We, as always, had a really packed agenda, but kind of one highlight is that we approved submitting an EPA grant for a brownfield site cleanup on 46 Prado, which is a property that's close to the 40 Prado shelter. And this particular site has, hopefully in the future, is going to be a family shelter. So we're hopeful that we'll get that $450,000 to get that cleanup done and get moving forward with that really important project for our community. And then Saturday night was wrapped up with the celebration with you all at the chamber dinner. And I'll leave it there.
I'm looking forward to the cleanup and see how that goes. And I went to the virtual training for the point in time count, so I can't wait to see you all at 5:30 in the morning. Councilmember Boswell.
Thank you. Yes, I also attended the Active Transportation Committee meeting. Fascinating discussion. Just really appreciate the work of the advisory committee. It's always nice watching them do their job. And really appreciated, there was quite a few folks from the community who came and spoke, and just really thoughtful comments from the community, and very helpful comments, I think, both to the ATC and what will ultimately come to us. So thanks.
Thank you so much. What a great wrap up. There's so much going on all the time. And we will be back here on February 3rd at 5:30, and we'll see you then. Have a great night. Thank you.